We're going live. And we're live. Share your screen with you as well. What? Oh, so something popped up on my screen there, folks. Just to give me something to read from YouTube, and I've no idea what it said, and it's disappeared. And it seems to be offering me a share screen option, which I'm not quite sure what that does. But I just popped on a wee second early just to make sure that everything's working okay. And there we go, there's 9 o'clock. So I'll say I'm Sloan. Welcome to my science fiction station, the Doghouse, and to chapter 8 of our Dune book club. Our Dune Messiah book club. I do apologize. We're sort of heading towards the main. We're getting piled into the plot, if you like, within this chapter. And it's a funny chapter, I think, that we're going to look at today. Let's see, just get my book open, a little bit disorganized as always, but a little bit of chaos in your life is always good, I think. And we're going to get to see a bit more of Alia in this chapter. Yeah, based on the previous chapter as well, we've got a few questions to ask. Essentially to do with how this scene comes together, that we have an intrusion upon Alia's privacy, and we end up with Paul and Stilgar intruding upon her when she's naked. And the bit that we have to ask ourselves is that we are told that this is Irulan's suggestion. So based on the previous chapter, with the conversation between Irulan and Gaius, Helen, Mohiam, where Mohiam's trying to figure out, will Irulan carry out the Bene Gesserit orders, or should she be forced to do so? We're told that the sisterhood reserved certain techniques to use weaker vessels as insurance, that vital instructions would be carried, which is suggestive of brainwashing or imprinting, etc., something dodgy. And we have Mohiam's explicit instructions. Basically, to make suggestions to Paul in relation to his sister. To the sister, obviously, she shared this loneliness. The depth of their communion must be exploited. And that's what we're going to see here. So opportunities must be created, this is from chapter 7, to throw them together in privacy. Intimate encounters must be arranged. The possibility of eliminating the concubine must be explored. So the previous chapter kind of set up something quite sinister. And as much as we'll not see Irulan in this chapter, we have to ask a question: is this the result of that conversation? And there's a couple of hints, at least, that it possibly is. There's also the suggestion, of course, about Irulan being off official pawn in order to kill Chani. And of course, this will mean that Irulan would be killed herself. And the question, I suppose, in this chapter that we also get to ask is, has Irulan betrayed the conspiracy here? A conspiracy that seems to be working as a collective, but also working in very, very individual ways. There's people have arrived. Goodness gracious, I didn't even see. There's Joseph Smith saying, howdy, Joseph, how you doing? And there's Babs Bilo saying, evening, Doc, can't be here long, but had to make it anyhow. And howdy, Joseph. Thanks very much for joining me, guys. As always, Babs, I tried to do a wee thing there for you not too long back. It was something that you'd asked me ages ago, to be honest with you. But I've been trying to attempt to contact a few people in regards to interviews and stuff, and I have to say, I tried to contact Alan Dean Foster, sent them a wee email, but I got back an email box is full kind of thing. Sadly, I tried to contact a couple of people, and it must be my personality or something. But in that case, that was it seems that I don't know if the gentleman's not too well or something, but it seems that his website's not being managed. So that was a wee bit sad. But I think you'd asked me once upon a time to do a video on Alan Dean Foster, and I've just been looking at the board here. Joseph Smith saying it froze. Have we frozen? Oh goodness, I hope we're not having any problems tonight. Let me know if you can't see me or anything, folks. I can always shut it down and come back in, I suppose. It does this now and then. I seem to be okay here with green lights and stuff, you know. There we go. Are you back? We're back, Joseph. There was just a wee bit of housekeeping, by the way, folks. The last episode, I'd kind of tried to explain in my old computer, like, well, just the way I talk sometimes about computer things and stuff, that we had a bunch of links, and I was trying to put a few of them into just about a few of them into the live chat and explain it. What I've done is, rather than go into all of that, if you look at the community page on the Science Fiction Station, you'll see I put up 4 photographs of Frank Herbert, and inside the description we've put all 21 links. You know, Barbara's saying, Babs is saying, yes, Alan Dean Foster's brain cancer. I did not know. I'm honestly surprised he's still around. Oh, it was, I had a board of things, Babs, basically, of stuff to do. And obviously over the last year and so on, we didn't get a lot of them done. And I was kind of, you know, I'd actually a bunch of videos to make and a bunch of audiobooks to make. And so I was just kind of looking at what can we start doing to get these things done. But I've got, yeah, but he was up there on my board, so I thought, but we can still do a wee video about the gentleman. You know, Alan Dean Foster's impact on science fiction, I think is quite important in terms of secondary material, if you like, from films and stuff, novelizations of very famous science fiction movies, etc., etc. And a writer in his own right, he would definitely be worth looking at. I know you like the, is it the, oh goodness, what is it? I think we talked about it a wee bit before, Babs. I haven't actually, is it? Oh, there's ones I haven't read by him that I think are quite well regarded by a lot of people. Is that, I can't remember their names. It's oh, there they go, Pip and Flinks, that's it. The Humanx Commonwealth Universe, quite a lot of those, 15 by the looks of it. Oh, no, maybe quite a lot more actually, finding on Dinotopia Journey, but it was the Spell Singer series in particular for me. I see that I haven't read one of them. I've just noticed there's an 8th one. I read last one I read was Son of Spell Singer. So it was just sort of having a wee kind of nosy about thinking about some science fiction writers and some books and stuff, you know. There's Carlos Crescelia saying, "Hey Doc, hey guys, hello Carlos, thanks very much for joining us." So if you have a wee look at just to finish that point, if you have a wee look at the community page, you'll see that there'll be 2 posts ago, because the most recent one is for this program. We have 4 pictures of Frank Herbert. If you have a look within the description, you will find 21 links to the actual files, which are lots of basically discussions by Frank Herbert, like a couple of lectures, talks, etc., and just general musings and readings. And some of them are pretty good. I think we were having a wee chat. There's somebody who's watching the station who's put me on to a few of these things. We'll just go XZ div. Basically, just passed as those wee links. It's kind of to do with the fault in their website. So we'll say thank you very much to them for passing that information on, and I thought I'd pass it on. But it's one of those things where they've put up an archive of Frank Herbert's audio, and they've kind of made it stream only. And I suppose with the person who sent me this stuff pointed out that there's various ways of getting this, but actually quite simply on their website. If you pay attention, if you go in and look at the code, you'll find the locations of those files. So they'll take you directly there. A wee media player will pop up, and all you got to do is right click on it and save audio as, and you'll have those. If you listen to them on, as pointed out to me, if you do listen to them on VLC media player, something like that, they're much better quality. They sound better than on the streaming, you know. There's Carlos was saying, I hadn't heard about Alan Dean Foster. Wow, I loved his books of the damned. Yeah, it's loads of stuff. Somebody said that I'd introduced him to the word tantalize recently. He introduced me to a few words. I always remember, is it comatose in particular, I think. Was a description of Hicks in the Aliens book. And I just thought, well, comatose, that's a great word. What was that? The Spell Singer is a perennial favourite of mine. I gave mine away, Babs. I gave them to a student, thought that she might like them. I don't know, probably a student who doesn't read too much, but I don't have any of them anymore. But I used to reread them quite a bit. and very much a kind of dope smoking, magic using guitar player, isn't it? A duo. But I love the characters, and it's a bit kind of Wind in the Willows meets I don't know. But if anybody's not read them, I would recommend them. Spell Singer series by Alan Dean Foster are great fun, and well written, but just great fun books. Good fantasy, kind of bit of science fiction, a little bit of everything, But it kind of takes the idea that all animals on this planet have developed the same way as humans have done. Coruscant, also a great series, Barbara. Yes. Yeah, so it was just a couple of wee things I was doing in the background, but I'd definitely love to put some stuff together. So just some ideas of videos that we're working on. Working on. As I said, we've got our roof leaking and stuff at the moment. There's always something getting in the way. But yeah, we've got an interesting chapter to look at, folks. Yeah, so we're having a just quick chat about it there. But let's take a wee look at we'll make a start with it. And we'll get our epigraph. Let's see. My bad handwriting's kicking in already. The Fremen see her as the Earth figure, a demi-goddess whose special charge is to protect the tribes through her powers of violence. She is Reverend Mother to their Reverend Mothers. To pilgrims who seek her out with demands that she restore virility or make the barren fruitful, she is a form of anti-mentat. She feeds on that strong human desire for the mysterious. She is living proof that the analytic has limits. She represents ultimate tension. She is the virgin harlot, witty, vulgar, cruel, as destructive in her whims as a Coriolis storm. St. Alia of the Knife as taken from the Irulan report. So the suggestion that might be written by Irulan, just because something's called the Irulan report, I suppose, doesn't necessarily mean that it's written by her. And there's quite a lot there, and we're going to see, we're going to get a little bit of a look at Alia in some of these aspects, and the ultimate tension that we're talking about. It's a strangely odd little chapter. I think that this tension is there, and we're also going to get this sense of the virgin harlot, if you like, witty, vulgar, cruel, as destructive as her whims as a Coriolis storm. So the other thing, I suppose, before we get going here is that as much as we've seen a bit of Alia and Dune Messiah, not too much, I suppose enough to shake the idea that she's a 4-year-old girl, I suppose. And at this point, we have her. I think we're informed that she's 15 on the point of 60. And so we're going to get to see a little bit about what Alia is thinking and how she behaves, etc. And I suppose just in terms of the Janus aspect of Paul, I think if the Kwisatz Haderach is a basis for the Kwisatz Haderach is a mentat, if you like. How do you make a Kwisatz Haderach? Start with a mentat, crack 2 eggs, this kind of thing. So she is the anti-mentat, we're told here, and in many ways the opposite of Paul. And I find personally, when looking at Paul and Alia, sometimes it's hard to separate the two characters. It's easy for me, I think, sometimes to see them as part of we talk about as a syzygy or a Janus aspect, if you like. But as much as that they're similar, they're also opposites, male and female. And the opposite here of being, I suppose, the anti-mentat to the mentat that is Paul, and the mysterious, I suppose, the desire, the strong human desire of the mysterious. We're told she's living proof that the analytic has limits. And we can see Paul being very analytical in general, can't we? She's born ancient, though. Yeah, I mean, that's right, Carlos. This is the problem when we look at Alia. It's hard to get a grasp on this character. In many ways, her tragedy begins before she's born. Old ancient, and we're going to see some of the paradoxes of that, I suppose, within this chapter. And it is an interesting thing because we have to consider, we're going to see a good bit of Alia's point of view here. some of her thoughts, etc. How would I put it? I don't know. The idea, I suppose, that there's an awakening sexuality in Alia, that she's entering the cusp of womanhood, if you like. I think is how Frank puts it. The fact that, I suppose, that what we're getting is a strong sexual desire towards hate, but that's kind of, at the same time, we're kind of tempered. We're you could almost consider a young woman kind of, I don't know, hitting puberty, this kind of thing, if you see what I mean, and having to deal with all of those changes. But we have essentially a child who's an old woman who there's no kind of sexual secrets to this young woman. Kind of in terms of a female aspect within her head is the kind of ultimate been there, done that kind of thing, if that makes any sense. So it's kind of a tricky thing to look at her here, and we'll see how we do. And feel free to jump in and help me if you if you would like. But it is, as I said, because I think it's a slightly tricky chapter. For that reason, I think it's quite interesting, as I tend to do. So let's get going, folks. And hopefully you'll interject and give me some of your opinions on this. So we're told that Alia stood like a black-robed sentinel figure on the south platform of her temple. The fane of the oracle, which Paul's Fremen cohorts had built for her against the wall of his stronghold. And we get some of her thoughts here. She hated this part of her life, but knew no way to evade the temple without bringing down destruction upon them. The pilgrims, damn them, grew more numerous every day. The temple's lower porch was crowded with them. Vendors moved among the pilgrims, and there were minor sorcerers, haruspices, diviners, all working their trade in pitiful imitation of Paul Muad'Dib and his sister. So the aspect of hating this part of her life, if you like, this is the religious theatre that the Atreides go through, which is their tool of statecraft. And it's how they manipulate people, and it's an old trick, isn't it? But the point is, I suppose, that the way that they have to act within their role within these religions is important, that they maintain this. We've talked a wee bit. It's very much. We've talked a wee bit about Kipling's "The Man Who Would Be King." This kind of thing. It's a well-known, well-done kind of story, but if you're going to set yourself up as a divinity or a god or something like this, you better make sure that you can behave like one and act like one, or rather, more importantly, not be seen to be behaving like a normal human being, if you see what I mean. That's one word I didn't look up there, but let's have a wee nosy at it. Haruspecs, there we go. Person trained to practice a form of divination called haruspicy, the inspection of the entrails of sacrificed animals, especially the livers of sacrificed sheep and poultry, such as the Babylonians various ancient cultures in the Near East, such as the Babylonians, also read omens specifically from the liver, a practice also known by the Greek term hepatoscopy, or herpetomancy. So just if you're wondering about that word there, I didn't manage to scribble that one down, but there's things like mancy, for example. In Greece, a mancer, again, is someone who divines the future through bird entrails. The Roman word for that one is augur, if you like. So there you go. That's a good word, haruspect. And as Joseph saying, I'm off to work. Be well. Take it easy, Joseph, and have a good day. Thanks very much for joining us. And here we get this Dune tarot. I quite enjoyed having a wee look at some of this. I ended up drawing a wee Dune tarot. There we go, the Great Worm. Just my only version of it, though I probably haven't done it right. But the new Dune tarot, we're told red and green packages containing the new Dune tarot were prominent among the vendors' wares, Alia saw. So vendors, people selling stuff, sorcerers, haruspices, diviners, all of these kind of things. We'd call almost a vendor as a seller, really, isn't it? Caveat vendor and caveat emptor, isn't it? Is may the buyer beware, may the seller beware, I suppose. But yeah, people selling kind of futures, magic, oracles, this kind of thing. Ooh. And it's basically an industry, isn't it? These are industries that have been created out of their perceived divinity, I think, you know. Blah, 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 blah. So red and green packages containing the new Dune tarot were prominent. So it's not just the Bene Gesserit, all sorts of people are using these to define the future, I suppose, which will have the well, we're going to see I suppose the result of that. So Alia's thoughts here are, we're told that she wondered about the tarot, and we've got a bunch of questions that she asks here. One, who was feeding this device into the Arakeen market? I've put down, is it the Bene Gesserit? It could be the Fremen. It could be Paul. I'm not too sure, actually. I'm not sure we've got an answer for that. I kind of went with the Bene Gesserit, actually, but the tarot seems to more fit into kind of Fremen superstition, if you see what I mean. Why had the tarot sprung to prominence at this particular time and place? And her answer here is, well, her other question, sorry, is, was it to muddy time? Spice addiction always conveyed some sensitivity to prediction. Fremen were notoriously fey. Was it an accident that so many of them dabbled in portents and omens here and now? She decided to seek an answer at the first opportunity. So it's a good question, I suppose. This tarot card deck has been introduced into Dune society, into Arakeen society, and all sorts of people are using it. And again, particularly within, we're told that there's a sensitivity to prediction within people who are addicted to spice, which would suggest that there's a sensitivity to prediction within the Fremen. Was it an accident? Probably not. And it's interesting, I suppose, that you can go down to most towns and find, I suppose, what you would call a New Age shop, where you can go in and find tarot cards and rune stones and I Ching and all sorts of things like we've had a wee chat about. I suppose why just this one? If you like, if you're wanting to really mess with the Atreides oracle, why not throw in the Dune tarot? Why not dump the I Ching in here? You know, why not start reading bird entrails? Why not all rune stones, etc.? Why not throw in lots of forms of divination? If you see what I mean. And Carlos was saying later, Joe, and Carlos was saying, I always thought it was the conspiracy to further obscure the future. Yeah, so it's an interesting thing to just let's produce lots of decks of cards, you know, to attack our enemy with it. I suppose the only thing I could think about it like in modern times, and I suppose this is very different, is the deck of cards that was produced, you know, by the Americans for the war against, you know, Iraq and Saddam Hussein. You know, all the kings, queens, jokers, etc., were all the top people, that kind of thing. But definitely to obscure the future. As Ali has put it, to muddy time, I suppose. So we're told there was a wind from the southeast, a small leftover wind, blunted by the scarp of the shield wall, which loomed high in these northern reaches. The rim glowed orange through a thin dust haze, underlighted by the late afternoon sun. It was a hot wind against her cheeks, and it made her homesick for the sand. Pardon me. For the security of open spaces. Now that's kind of interesting, I suppose. It's the same kind of homesickness that our longing that we see with Paul and Chani. You know, this desire to, and there's something almost paradoxical about it, isn't it? The security of the open spaces. You know, and it's just this kind of the wind gently sort of, just sort of gently giving this orange glow, very pretty scene, if you like, a nice evening sunset, late afternoon sun. Hot wind against her cheeks, just the feel of it makes her homesick for the sand and for the security of open spaces. So they're in this fortress, etc. All of this kind of thing, and it's something that we've always got from Dune, isn't it? That the sense of security in the sieges, etc., and siege life. is different very much than the security of life of somebody in a major house, for example, like the Atreides, who have to have every meal with a poison sniffer, this kind of thing. And I think that there will be some sort of contradictions here. God, I have to say, Frank loves a paradox, doesn't he? This kind of homesickness, desire for security, etc., etc. It seems to be sort of moving through the main characters here. One of these things is how much has changed here, if you like. How much have the Fremen been changed? How much have the Atreides been changed by gaining power, I suppose. So we get a little bit of a sense of what's going on in our Arakeen. The last of the day's mob, again the word mob suggested there, began descending the brutal green stone steps of the lower porch, singly and in groups, a few pausing to stare at the keepsakes and holy amulets on the street vendors' racks, some consulting one last minor sorcerer. Pilgrims, supplicants, townfolk, Fremen, vendors closing up for the day. They formed a straggling line that trailed off into the palm-lined avenue which led to the heart of the city. Pardon me. There's Chaya. Oh, pardon me. Chaya Rivka saying, Shalom all. Shalom, Chaya. Hope you're keeping well. How's the ribs? I hope they're healing well. I was thinking about you today, and I just also say, I hope your son's keeping well and life's not too crazy where you're at the minute. But I was thinking, actually, wouldn't it be great if Chaya's here today, because we've got this word coming up, which is an interesting word, this shibboleth, Hebrew or shibboleth. If I'm not, I don't know. I was going to ask you about its pronunciation, but we'll get there. But it's good to see you, Chaya. I hope you're keeping well, and I hope you're well on the mend. Yes, indeed. So Alia's eyes picked out the Fremen, marking the frozen looks of superstitious awe on their faces, the half-wild way they kept their distance from the others. Yeah, I suppose Alia and the Fremen's relationship's an interesting one, isn't it? We're told that they were... sorry, let me just get that. They kept their distance from the others. This is the Fremen. They were her strength and her peril, we're told. And I've just written a little note to myself next, just to pay attention to that. They still captured giant worms for transport, for sport, and for sacrifice. They resented the off-world pilgrims, barely tolerated the townfolk of Graben and Pan, hated the cynicism they saw on the street vendors. One did not jostle a wild Fremen, even in a mob such as the ones which swarmed to Alia's fate. There were no knifings in the sacred precincts, but bodies have been found later. The departing swarm had stirred up dust. There's a bit. Sorry, I've just had a bit where my handwriting has failed me again. The flinty. Okay. Oh, goodness knows what that looks like. I'll just fix that in my book here, because it doesn't look like flinty. Flinty. The flinty odor. Phew. Came to Alia's nostrils and ignited another pang of longing for the open blade. Her sense of the past, she realized, had been sharpened by the coming of the Gola. So things had changed here. The Fremen are Alia's strength and her peril, I suppose. And we get this sense that the casual killing, if you like, of the Fremen, that if they do encounter any pilgrims that they're not too happy with, that they have a level of respect, it seems, for Alia's fame, that they won't murder them there and then. They'll wait till they head off somewhere else before dispatching them. Bodies have been found. So all of this is making the city life, if you like, the aspect of pilgrimage and how it's applied to their religion. Yeah, it's an interesting thing for Alia to look at, I suppose, for us to look at through Alia's eyes, and that she doesn't like this. We're told there'd been much pleasure in those. Oh my God! Hang on, that's my handwriting again. Sorry. Oh, no, it's not that bad. Untrammeled days before her brother had mounted the throne. And here, I think we've got a lot of nostalgia here. It was time for joking, a time for small things, time to enjoy a cool morning or a sunset. Time, time, time. Kind of reminds me on Ecclesiastes, doesn't it? But the little things, I think, is what it's pointing at. Joke, having a laugh, little things, enjoying a cool morning and a sunset or a sunset. Time. And the next statement was quite interesting. Even danger had been good in those days. Clean danger from known sources. No need then to strain the limits of prescience to peer through murky veils for frustrating glimpses of the future. And we're told that there's a wild Fremen saying. Wild Fremen said it well. 4 things cannot be hidden: love, smoke, a pillar of fire, and a man striding across the open blade. I thought I was going to just apply that to the prescience and conspiracy, but that reminded me of Lawrence of Arabia a wee bit, I think. There we go. Barak Hashem, all is quiet here. Oh, it's good. Says Chaya. I hope you're keeping well and on the mend. I got to look that up because I don't know what it means. Blessed Hashem forever. Gotcha. Thank you. Well, I hope you're keeping well. Let's see. So, yeah, things that cannot be hidden. Love, I suppose, and if we apply this to the conspiracy and prescience, I suppose Alia's love of ultimately is going to come out. Paul and Shani's love. Smoke, a pillar of fire, we're going to see one, and a man striding across the open blade. That's the bit that reminded me of Lawrence of Arabia, actually, I thought. So Alia retreats. We're told after seeing this with an abrupt feeling of revulsion, Alia retreated from the platform into the shadows of the Féin, strode across the balcony which looked down into the glistening opalescence of her hall of oracles. Sand on the tiles wrapped beneath her feet. Supplicants always track sand into the sacred chambers. She ignored attendants, guards, postulates, the Quizeratis' omnipresent priest sycophants. Plunged into the spiral passage which twisted upwards to her private quarters. And we're told that there, amidst the divans, deep rugs, tent hangings, and mementos of the desert, she dismissed the Fremen Amazons. Stilgar had assigned as her personal guardians. And Alia's thoughts here are watchdogs, more likely. I keep saying that I'm reading the Arabian Nights at the minute, and almost every chapter I read of Dune Messiah so far, I've found something, or just happens to be an analog or something like that within the Arabian Nights story that I'm reading, and I'm still reading the rather lengthy one of the tale of Hassan of Basra, and it's got Amazons on it. And just as I was reading, I went, oh, there we go. So Amazons are, as I'm sure we all know, are female warriors from Greek mythology, and there's a few different things about them. Let me see. I'll not go nuts about them here or anything like that. But if you want to look them up on Wikipedia or pile into, you'll have a fair bit to read about them. Actually, most famous of them, I think, would be Artrea. There's Penthesilea. I'm really bad at saying her name. I'll have another go at it. Penthesilea. Yeah. I used to be quite good. Penthesilea. We'll go with. Hippolyta, Marine, and Antiope would be amongst the more famous ones. Hippolyta's girdle would be one of Heracles' 12 labors, or 13 if you take it. And oddly enough, though she's killed during that, she would appear within the myth of Theseus as well. Penthesilea is there we go, I got it right there, is the Amazon who fights Achilles at the Battle of Troy, and is killed by him, and then he falls in love with her dead body. It's a bit weird, but you'll find her elsewhere and so on. So there's a bunch of different Amazons, but basically female warriors. Their capital would be Themyscira, which is supposedly on the Thermodon River. But there you go. There's all sorts of, if you want to look into it, there's all sorts of speculation on who the Amazons were, etc. But they're very much considered real people by the ancient Greeks. Interesting bunch. But just that little, and again, Amazons as a guard, I suppose, for Alia. It's just a little mention. We'll hear about them again, I think. But as we proceed down the Dune novels, what we have here is an all-female military guard, if you like. They're Fremen, which would make them pretty lethal, I'd imagine. As we go through the Dune series, we'll see Frank Herbert has a lot of ideas about the we'll call it, how we put it, the homosexual and adolescent nature of the military. And so just as a precursor, we're going to see an all-female army down the road by the time we get to the God Emperor, etc. So it's just an interesting little, here we have some Fremen women acting as personal bodyguards. Pardon me. And as much as, assigned by Stilgar, Alia's thoughts that watchdogs more likely keeping an eye on her. The most famous Amazon was Wonder Woman, says Carlos. Wonder Woman? Yes, indeed. Probably is the most famous Amazon by far by now. It's funny that, isn't it? It's sometimes when you go to look things up, if you know what I mean, from the ancient world, and the name has been appropriated by a company or, this kind of thing. Yeah, she is indeed. I've seen the first new Wonder Woman film. I haven't seen the 1984 one, but I thought the first one was okay. But I really I quite liked Wonder Woman and the, God, I'm showing my age, aren't I, Carlos? Linda Carter would have been Wonder Woman for me. In the TV series, which I remember as being quite good. Fighting for her rights in her satin tights and all. But yes, indeed. It is funny, isn't it? I think that's, the most famous Amazon is Wonder Woman. Yeah. So I would have went with Hippolyta there, but yeah, Princess Irulan is an interesting one, where she's mentioned here and there. I don't even know I don't think she's in the Iliad or the Odyssey at all. Let's have a look. Let's see. Pipth was Amazon Queen, daughter of Ares and Otrera, and the sister of Hippolyta, Antiope, and Melanippe. Assisted Troy in the Trojan War, during which she was killed by either Achilles or Neoptolemus, who's Achilles' son. The asteroid 271 Penthesilea, discovered in 1887, was named in her honor. There we go. Yeah. In the Ethiopias, which was part of the epic cycle in the Trojan War, that's where we find stuff about her. She's gone. Sorry, that's gone. It's lost. Sadly, another part of, wouldn't it be amazing if we had the whole, the Cyprian, the full Greek epics, if you know what I mean. Let's see, just to see if there's to Homer's. No, I don't. Because she's meant to be a Thracian woman warrior. There we go. Associated with Thrace. Others are like the Scythians and stuff like that, I think. There you go. She's in Apollodorus' library. She's said to have been killed by Achilles, who fell in love with the Amazon after her death and slew Thersites for jeering at him. That's an interesting one. Is that true, Carlos? That's interesting. The Wonder Woman creator also invented the lie detector, explains the lasso of truth. Oh, wow. That's cool. It's interesting that some people, they do things and they get up to other stuff and you never kind of know. That's really interesting. I loved Wonder Woman. I thought I didn't grow up on Marvel comics or DC comics, American comics, as I'm sure you know, being in Northern Ireland. But really, where I would have got introduced to that, but I think I've talked about how difficult it was to get American comics when I was a kid, and you get British ones and European ones more. But in terms of shows of American comic book heroes, Wonder Woman would have been the main one, and the Hulk, I think. I don't really remember. Maybe Spider-Man would have been more in cartoon form, if you like. Though I saw there's a very early Spider-Man. Goodness, I'll tell you which one it is before I make it. But I actually saw it in the cinema. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. What was the film? Because it's certainly, I mean, I know they churn them out these days, don't they? It's the one with the funny little mind control badges or something like that, as I recall. Oh, goodness, that's gone mad. I'll not waste my time trying to figure it out. I think it was just called Spider-Man. William Moulton Marston. Look him up. He really was a man ahead of his time. Yep. Moulton Marston. That's an interesting middle name. There you go. I'm looking up right now. I have no idea about this. Known by the pen name Charles Moulton, was an American psychologist who, with his wife Elizabeth Holloway, invented an early prototype of the polygraph. He was also known as a self-help author and comic book writer who created the character Wonder Woman. Two women, his wife Elizabeth Holloway Marston and their polyamorous life partner Olive Byrne, greatly influenced Wonder Woman's creation. There you go. Inducted into the Comic Book Hall of Fame in 2006. Sounds like an interesting chap. 2 children each with both his wife and partner. Psychologist and inventor. Oh. 50 who made DC great. I forget Wonder Woman's DC, isn't she? Yeah. Yeah, I think very different, these comic book characters these days, aren't they? Thank you very much. Sounds like an interesting book. Apologies. So, here we go. So, Alia with revulsion is getting away from this. And we've just into her personal chambers, dismisses the Amazons that Stilgar has placed there, who she thinks are watchdogs. When they had gone, muttering and objecting, but more fearful of her than they were of Stilgar, she stripped off her robe, leaving only the sheathed crysknife on its thong around her neck. Strewed garments behind her as she made for the bath. Now, the crysknife, I suppose, in this sense, we could, in this chapter, there are a few things that we can maybe look at as phallic symbols, if you like, and that will be one of them. So here we get Alia's thoughts on hate. So this is where her mind is. He was near, she knew, that shadow figure of a man. That shadow figure of a man she could sense in her future, but could not see. It angered her that no prescience could put flesh on that figure. He could be sensed only at unexpected moments while she scanned the lives of others. Or she came upon a smoky outline in solitary darkness when innocence lay coupled with desire. He stood just beyond an unfixed horizon, and she felt that if she strained her talents to an unexpected intensity, she might see him. He was there, a constant assault on her awareness. Fierce, dangerous, immoral. That's interesting, isn't it? Were Alia's guards there to protect her person or virtue? That's a good question. I would say it's her person, really, but I don't think Alia would need much protecting, if you see what I mean. We're about to see why. But I would consider Alia to be incredibly dangerous. And as much as we're going to talk about, I suppose, a sexual awakening, if you like, for Alia, And what does that mean to a young woman who is not innocent in any way whatsoever? She's called Alia of the Knife for a reason, going out and dispatching the dead enemies of her, on the battlefield. And it's an act of kindness to go out and kill people. I don't know. In fact, I actually think it is more. The more and more we see about Alia and Paul together, actually, in this book, I think the more and more it is interesting to consider them. The more that we learn about Alia, in some ways, the more that fleshes out Paul, I think. So here we go, the bath. And I've just written down lemon jelly. For anybody who doesn't know the tune, have a listen. I love lemon jelly, they're great. So we're told that moist, warm air surrounded her in the bath. Moisture. Here was a habit she had learned from the memory entities of the uncounted Reverend mothers who were strung out in her awareness like pearls on a glowing necklace. I think the language is a wee bit funny here, and it's some of it's suggestive, isn't it? Moist, moisture. We've got a pearl necklace in there, phallic symbols, etc., etc. There's a degree of kind of subtle sexual tension, if you like. That's probably the right word to use in this chapter. Building with Alia's character. Warm water in a sunken tub accepted her skin as she slid into it. Green tiles with figures of red fish. Yeah, luxury, really, isn't it? Sorry, got to clear the page there. Warm water in a sunken tub accepted her skin as she slid into it. Green tiles with figures of red fish worked into a sea pattern surrounding the water. Such an abundance of water occupied this space that a Fremen of old would have been outraged to see it used merely for washing human flesh. And I'd actually written down water discipline prior to this. And I think it's interesting that if as readers of Dune, I don't know, when we see somebody being sloppy with water, it's I don't know, it makes you think. I'm kind of funny about that, and I live in a country where there's an abundance of water. I just think it's interesting. So it's how far removed are they from their Fremen origins? That she's yearning to go back to the desert, but here she is soaking in a bath that would be seen as all extreme extravagance to the Fremen. And I wonder how would her it doesn't really talk about running a bath or anything like that, so I wonder how the Fremen Amazons who are hanging around feel about it, if you see what I mean. He was near. Again, still focusing on Duncan. And here we go. Here's Alia's thoughts. This is quite interesting. And again, just before we get back, run through this, if we just think of our epigraph in regards to Alia again, we've got the special charges to protect the tribes through her powers of violence, etc., etc. But she is the ultimate. She represents ultimate tension. She is the virgin harlot. Witty, vulgar, cruel, as destructive in her whims as a Coriolis storm. And I actually think Ali is acting in innocence in this sense, in a way, but is projecting something else. We'll see about it as we move on into the chapter. But this is very interesting. Here we go. And I think there's a few clues in this within her thoughts. Here we go. It was lust in tension with chastity. Her flesh desired a mate. Sex held no casual mystery for a Reverend mother who presided at siege orgies. The Tau awareness of her other selves could supply any detail her curiosity required. I'll just read on a wee bit and then we'll fall back here. This feeling of nearness could be nothing other than flesh reaching for flesh, which seems quite a simple thing when we break it down, I suppose. And that's probably what it is, just to say that. The need for action fought lethargy in the warm water. So we'll just back up a wee bit. The bit that I thought was really interesting, and I think we have another clue to it within this chapter, is to do with Alia's state of mind as an abomination. And the clue here, I suppose we're talking lust and tension with chastity, the virgin harlot there. her flesh desired a mate. But she had no casual mystery about it. She's presided at siege orgies. And within her memory would be the experience of such things, I suppose. The Tao awareness of her, this is the bit I think that's interesting, is the Tao awareness of her other selves, that word there, that phrase. Sorry, let me just have a wee quick check at how it's put in the book, because I've written it as one word. It's hyphenated, yeah. That was sloppy of me, wasn't it? Not leaving out a hyphen. Compound word. Her other selves, I think, is suggestive of the. Well, we know that there are many personalities within other memory. Pardon me, but she references them as other selves rather than other entities, other members of the female line, whatever you want to call it. That the Tao awareness of her other selves could supply any detail her curiosity requires. So it's just that word. In terms of, what is an abomination, how does it work, etc. Alia has always been a bit of a problem to discuss, I think. She's a very tricky character to get to grips with. And ultimately very tragic, as we know what ultimately happens to her. But I think, are we starting to get, I think that's possibly a seed of it there, if that's a good way of putting it. They're not other memory persons, they're not people from other memory, they're her other selves. So it's possible, I suppose, that ultimately, whenever we do get to look at the idea of abomination as we move further into the books, can we consider it a form of schizophrenia? Perhaps. Or simply just a form of madness where someone loses it completely by being swarmed by so many other personalities. But I just thought that it was their other selves. That was I think it's important. And I think there's something else in this chapter that will go with that. This feeling of nearness could be nothing other than flesh reaching for flesh. So I genuinely think that little statement there is kind of really what it is about. Because there would be no curiosity to experience sex, if you see what I mean, because she knows it all. And there's something mysterious about Duncan, Idaho, that appeals to Alia, or hate, sorry. And again, it's we're told that she feeds on that strong human desire for the mysterious. And as we move further in, we get to look at hate a little bit more. They're an interesting couple, if you like. And yeah, I think it takes a fair bit of consideration really to get to grips with this character sometimes. Put it this way, I'm still wondering about her, to be honest. So, need for action, fought the lethargy in the warm water, and we're told abruptly, Alia climbed dripping from the bath, strode wet and naked into the training chamber which adjoined her bedroom. Is that bedroom or should that be bathroom? I've really got to sort my writing out, haven't I? Her bedroom, it is bedroom. Yeah, there we go. So the training chamber. So need for action. We're going to be asked in a little while wonder what Alia is doing running around here naked. It's her private room. She's just got out of a bath, I suppose. I suppose, yeah, we'll have a wee look at it when we get there. She climbed, dripping from the bath, strode wet and naked into the training chamber which adjoined her bedroom. The chamber, oblong and skylighted, contained the gross and subtle instruments which toned a Bene Gesserit adept into ultimate physical and mental awareness preparedness. And we get a list of the technology here, I suppose. There were mnemonic amplifiers, digit mills from X to strengthen and sensitize fingers and toes. I think that's quite good. You get little things like this if you're guitar players, etc. They're like a tiny version of a fretboard about that size, and you can sit and make your different shapes and so on, and exercise your fingers. Things like that exist. Like that for your toes as well. I mean, Paul's deadly toe, way back in June. Odor synthesizers, things that can make smells. Tactility sensitizers. Temperature gradient fields, pattern betrayers to prevent her falling into detectable habits. I think that one's interesting because we'll see in a bit. Alpha wave response trainers, blink synchronizers to tone abilities in light dark spectrum analysis. An awful lot of Bene Gesserit gear. All sounds quite interesting. But we're told here in 10-centimeter letters along one wall, written by her own hand in mnemonic paint, stood the key reminder from the Bene Gesserit creed. And I've just plonked that one there. There we go. Carlos says, wasn't she known as the Virginia harlot? Virgin harlot, yes. Virgin damn spell check. No problem, got that. That'll be quite interesting if she's the Virginia harlot. She is indeed the Virgin harlot. Yes, indeed, Carlos. And it's you know, they're opposed, aren't they? They're opposites. And I think that's the thing. And the other thing I think interesting in this, all of Dune Messiah, is we are getting a complete inversion of everything that's kind of happened in Dune. You'll see similar. You know, there's plans within plans. There's a trap that should be. In order to avoid it, we'll walk into it. There's a number of things that are similar. But I think one of the real differences with the inversion of Dune is that the female characters come to the fore. If you see what I mean. Whereas in Dune, they're in the background. Here, they're not. So here it is, the key reminder from the Bene Gesserit Creed. Before us, all methods of learning were tainted by instinct. We learn how to learn. Before us, instinct-ridden researchers possessed a limited attention span, often no longer than a single lifetime. Projects stretching across 50 or more lifetimes never occurred to them. The concept of total muscle nerve training had not entered awareness. So I suppose there's a couple of different things in there, but about research, which I think is kind of interesting. But there's no long-term thinking is the key bit there. And the concept of total muscle nerve training had not entered awareness. That's the thing that doesn't. But before us, all methods of learning were tainted by instinct. I think that was interesting. We were saying that we never quite figured out a meaning between Irulan for Irulan's name. And then we realized that if we reversed her name, we got something. Where can I find it here? I think it was something I just put in at random, wasn't it? Because I've been trying to find something on her for a while, but it was someone who doesn't. We'll have to have a wee look, see if we can find it. Time and thorough. It was something about not being taught with instinct, if I can remember rightly. Let me just see if I can. It was a wee while back, wasn't it? That's the thing about these notes. We're not. Sometimes I just come up with it. Oh, I wonder, is that what it is? And I stick it in at random just to make sure it's in the book. We'll not worry about it too much now. It'll be on one of the previous videos there, folks, if you want to check it out. Hang on, let me just see. That's the word. It's a word that means instinct in Malay, according to this. Let me just see if I could find whatever source I got before. I think I had to hit Wikipedia. Well, yeah, instinct. There we go. I'm not worried about it, folks. I'll not try and find it because I'll end up just sort of killing time here. But I think it was in one of the previous videos. Now, where did we get to? Oh, I'll jump forward a bit here. Hang on. So, the training room. As she moved into the training room, Alia caught her own reflection. This is the bit here. Multiplied thousands of times in the crystal prisms of a fencing mirror swinging in the heart of a target dummy. She saw the long sword waiting on its brackets against the target, and she thought, yes, I'll work myself to exhaustion, drain the flesh, and clear the mind. Now, just that previous bit, Alia's reflection times 1,000, I think, is another clue at her mental state, if you like. She caught her own reflection multiplied thousands of times in the crystal prisms of a fencing mirror. I think, especially within the last little statement about her other selves, that this mirror is a reflection. If I'm not mistaken, the mirror is a thing that will, I think the mirror will kind of show personalities later on. It's been a long time since I've read Children, etc. But whenever the personality of the Baron comes to the fore, I think, I might be completely wrong. So, and again, we've got this another phallic symbol here with the sword. And the knife, I suppose. Yeah. So she's going to work off her, drain the flesh and clear the mind, work off her sexual tension, if you like. The thoughts about hate. So we're told the sword felt right in her hand. She slipped the crysknife from its sheath at her neck, held it sinister, it's your left hand, tapped the activating stud with the sword tip, and resistance came alive as the aura of the target shield built up, pushing her weapon slowly and firmly away. So here we get some action and a good bit of tension building here. And I'll try and pile through this a wee bit and see how we do. So the prisms glittered and the target slipped to her left. So this is a sort of fighter, a bit like the thing that Paul fought, I suppose, in Dune. So lust and tension with chastity. So Alia followed with the tip of the long blade, thinking, as she often did, that the thing could almost be alive. So we get little comments about the Butlerian jihad here, I think. But it was only servo motors and complex reflector circuits designed to lure the eyes away from danger, to confuse and teach. It was an instrument geared to react as she reacted, an anti-self, which moved as she moved, balancing light on its prisms, shifting its target, offering it its counterblade. And we're told that many blades appeared to lunge at her from the prisms, but only one was real. She countered the real one, slipped the sword past shield resistance to tap the target. A marker light came alive, red and glistening amongst the prisms. Again, the thing attacked, moving at one marker speed, now just a bit faster than it had at the beginning. She parried and against all caution, moved into the danger zone, scored with the crysknife, two lights glowed from the prisms. Excuse me. Again, the thing increased speed, moving out on its rollers, drawn like a magnet to the motions of her body and the tip of her sword. Attack, parry, counter, 3 lights. Attack, parry, counter. She had 4 lights alive in there now, and the thing was becoming more dangerous, moving fast with each light, offering more areas of confusion. 5 lights. Sweat glistened on her naked skin. She existed now in a universe whose dimensions were outlined by the threatening blade, the target, bare feet against the practice floor, sense nerve muscles, motion against motion. Attack, parry, counter. I've just written next to that. That's a pattern. We get 6 lights, 7, 8. She had never before risked 8. Alia, in a recess of her mind, grew a sense of urgency, a crying out against such wildness as this. The instrument of prisms and target would not think, feel caution or remorse. And it carried a real blade. And I've just written next to that is almost a comparison to hate. You know, if we look at hate as a tool, as an instrument, would he think, feel caution or remorse in killing? This kind of thing carries a real blade. Just made me think about him a bit. To go against less defeated the purpose of such training, that attacking blade could maim and it could kill. The finest swordsman in the Imperium never went against more than 7 lights. And I think that's strongly indicative there of what she's doing and why. Who is the strongest swordsman, the finest swordsman in the Imperium? Who knows? But we could take a suggestion that it could be considered to be Duncan Idaho. And if the finest swordsman, would he have ever got 7 lights? This kind of thing. Is it some sort of attempt at competition, perhaps? And maybe understanding of Duncan, you know? So she's playing a dangerous game here with real risk. And I suppose we're told the finest swordsman in the Imperium never went against more than 7 lights, but 9. And she experienced a sense of supreme exaltation. Attacking blade and target became blurs among blurs. She felt that the sword in her hand came alive. She was an anti-target. She did not move the blade, it moved her. 10, 11. And for a bit of fun, we've reached Spinal Tap. We've turned it all the way up to 11. Oh dear. Carlos is saying, wouldn't the training machine, since it learned from her attacks, be a thinking machine? I think that it's probably close, but you within the prescriptions of the Butlerian Jihad. No, it's a thing. I think, yeah, well, I suppose we're going to get the discussion of why it's not, of the problems of it not being thinking, if you like. Where did we have that there? It's moving on its rollers. A thinking machine. I don't know. We've got things like that, I suppose, with programming. It doesn't need to think. If you programmed a basic game, like a little shoot 'em up computer game, and somebody does through one level, and then you just make everything move a little bit faster. So it would be a machine that works by increments, I think. Well, I've no self-determination. I don't think so. It's kind of interesting in what you're saying, Carlos, because in a funny way, the target machine. Did we get to the bit where she compared it to herself yet? No, we haven't. We can think of this the target, if you like, partly as a substitute, if you like, a shoe-in for Duncan Idaho's hate character. But it's also in a sense herself. We're told that the machine itself is an anti-self. Pardon me. It's an interesting one. It was an instrument geared. So here's the discussion on it. It was only servo motors and complex reflector circuits designed to lure the eyes away from danger, to confuse and teach. It was an instrument geared to react as she reacted, an anti-self which moved as she moved, balancing light on its prisms, shifting its target, offering its counter blade. But let me see. So as much as she views it as an anti-self, which you could think of in terms of, the Butlerian Jihad and what is an anti-self in this machine. But at the same time, the inverse of that is that she's the anti-target against the target, if you like, against the self. But in her own mind, let's see, the instrument at present could not think. That's what we're told here. In a recess of her mind grew a sense of urgency, a crying out against such wildness as this. The instrument of prisms and target could not think, feel caution or remorse. So it wouldn't know, for example, if somebody made a mistake It wouldn't know to stop. If somebody tripped and fell, I'd imagine it wouldn't know to stop either. You'd think it would have some kind of safety thing, but I don't think so, Carlos. No self-determination. Just something that increases in speed and mimics. I think mimesis is more a thing, if you like. That it mimics the actions from what we can get here. I think of the person fighting it, and as much as therefore that's why I think she views the machine as an anti-self. At the same time, with this, just before we got to 10, she felt that the sword in her mind had come alive. She was an anti-target. She did not move the blade, it moved her. So there's definitely something interesting about it. This is one of the chapters where we get little things like this dropped from the Butlerian Jihad in here. We're told that something flashed past her shoulder, slowed at the shield aura around the target, slid through and tripped the deactivating stud. Now that kind of seems silly, that the deactivating stud is within the target itself. We're told the lights darkened and the prisms and target twisted their way to stillness. And Alia whirled, angered by the intrusion. But her reaction was thrown into tension by awareness of the supreme ability which had hurled that knife. It had been a throw timed to exquisite nicety, just fast enough to get through the shield zone and not too fast to be deflected. Anger, awareness, ability. That's matching up with these little triplets within this chapter: attack, parry, counter, but that one in particular, awareness, anger, awareness, ability. If we back up, and I'm just going to say this because we're going to be told who throws this knife in a moment. But if you weren't told who, up to this point, who would you think it was? Fierce, dangerous, immoral are the three words that we have attached to hate, being a constant assault. He was there. Fierce, dangerous, immoral. Here we have anger, awareness, ability. And it had touched a 1 millimeter spot within an 11 light target. So Alia found her own emotions and tensions running down in a manner not unlike that of the target dummy. So we really do have this comparison between her and the machine. She was not at all surprised to see who'd thrown a knife. Now, up until that point, if you're reading this and you haven't looked any further, I would have put my money on that it was hate that thrown the knife, just because of the way that we've been discussing, the way that the character's been thought about, etc. here. But of course, it's not. It's Paul. And we go straight there. Paul stood just inside the training room doorway, Stilgar 3 steps behind him. Her brother's eyes were squinted in anger. He's quite an angry fellow, Paul, isn't he? So here we go. And I suppose we're going to look at this in some ways here, but ultimately the way I look at this is that Alia's privacy has been invaded here. These two men have wandered into, this is the training room next to her bedroom, but this is meant to be her private area. Alia, growing conscious of her nudity, thought to cover herself. Alia found the idea amusing. What the eyes had seen could not be erased. Slowly she replaced the crysknife in its sheath at her neck. I might have known, she said. Now, you have to excuse me for a wee quick second, folks. I'm going to have to run to the loo very quickly, but I'll be right back. Excuse-moi. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. There we go. Excuse me. I'll just get some fluids here. I think this is kind of funny. I suppose depending on how you look at Alia in this chapter, and we can see how the men will look at her in a bit. Growing conscious of her nudity, thought to cover herself, but then found the idea amusing. She thought it'd be funny. And if we back up to, she's the epigraph again. She represents ultimate tension. She is the virgin-hearted, witty, and vulgar, and cruel, and as destructive in her whims. So this is her sense of humor kicking in here. Let them have a look at what they see. They'll not be able to unsee. And it is a deliberate act, and it's also suggestive. And of course, she says, "I might have known." As in, who's doing this? Who's done this? And Paul responds, "I presume you know how dangerous that was." He took his time reading the reactions on her face and body, the flush of her exertions colouring her skin, the wet fullness of her lips. There was a disquieting femaleness about her that he had never considered in his sister. He found it odd that he could look at a person who was this close to him and no longer recognise her in the identity framework which had seemed so fixed and familiar. That's a really nice bit of writing by Frank there, I actually thought. And I suppose it reveals a little thing about Paul, is that, he's almost kind of oblivious to his sister's femaleness, if you like. This is almost like a revelation to him. But there's a lot of nice, that took his time reading the reactions. There's some good alliteration, etc. in here. Seemed so fixed and familiar. It's nice to read out loud, if you see what I mean. So, again, the sense of danger really is the thing that seems to be occupying Paul here, rather than his sister's nudity. But this disquieting femaleness that he'd never considered in his sister, and he found it odd that he could look at her, a person so close to him, and no longer recognize her in the identity framework that had seemed so fixed and familiar. So I suppose that's maybe the thing. If we've read Dune, we have a sense of Alia from 12 years ago, which is of a child. This child becoming a woman, and of course we have to wonder: is this part of this plot here? Really, Stilgar interjects here. That was madness. And a use of the word madness as well, which will Stilgar Rast coming up to stand beside Paul. And Alia's point of view here seems that the words were angry, but Alia heard awe in his voice and saw it in his eyes. Paul says, 11 lights, shaking his head. And Alia says, I'd have made it to 12 if you hadn't interfered. She began to pale under his close glare and added, and why do the damn things have that many lights if we're not supposed to try for them? And Paul asks here, a Bene Gesserit should ask the reasoning behind an open-ended system. I think it's quite funny. And Alia says, I suppose you never tried for more than 7. Her anger returning, his attentive posture began to annoy her. She's a bit miffed. He's paying attention to her, though. I think that's interesting. Just once, Paul replies, Gurney Halleck caught me on 10. My punishment was sufficiently embarrassing that I won't tell you what he did. And speaking of embarrassment, and I've written down, we're going to discuss the worm in the room, I think. And Alia says, well, next time perhaps you'll have yourselves announced. And she brushed past Paul into the bedroom, found a loose grey robe, slipped into it, and began brushing her hair before a wall mirror. And again, that mirror, I suppose mirror on the wall, all of this kind of thing, that many associations with mirrors and fractured personalities, etc. Just curious, let's have a wee nosy. But what is the Greek myth about mirrors? There's something there. Okay. Peril of over-admiring one's mirror image is encapsulated in the ancient Greek myth of Narcissus. Okay, that's fair enough. what's this thing here that says the act of looking into this is, I don't know if the source of this is any good or not, but it says mirrors in Greek mythology. It's the first thing that's come up on the Google search. It says the act of looking into a mirror was often thought to reveal the future. It was believed too that if one gazed into a mirror for too long, their soul would be stolen. To the ancient Greeks, mirrors were like pools of water where souls could be trapped, a theme that is reflected in the story of Narcissus. There we go. What is the Greek myth? That's quite funny. Mirrors in literature and superstition. Mirror can trap a dying soul. This kind of thing. 7 years bad luck with a broken mirror. Well, you know. Of course, mirror, mirror on the wall. That's from Snow White, isn't it? Snow White and Rose Red. Yeah. So a mirror features heavily here. As I think there are certain little keys to Alia's clues to Alia's state of mind, that it's starting to become fragmented, I think. Why do the damn things have many lights? I thought that was quite funny. Open-ended system. You just have a machine that can make any number out of a combination of dots, if you like, just like a calculator. So it's open-ended. It's not a closed-off system. And we don't get to learn what Paul's embarrassing punishment was. Something for us to kind of amuse ourselves about. I'm sure we could maybe... I was just thinking that perhaps Brian Herbert could get a book out of it. Paul's Punishment by Gurney Halleck. Or just a story featuring it that was sufficiently embarrassing. I won't tell you what he did, but it's a pity we don't know, but it's something that gives a little bit of realism, I think, to Paul's character. I think that's a nice little touch. So I actually think the writing in this is very good. It's just that the things that we're starting to see laid out in front of us are going to get tricky. You know. And Carlos is saying, like, the native belief that photographs would steal their souls. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, look at. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the myth of Echo and Narcissus. There'll be several versions of it, no doubt. But yeah, it doesn't. I suppose it doesn't go well for Echo either, does it? Let's see. Let's have a look at Narcissus. Lovely plant, isn't it? In fact, I suppose there's lots of things attaining to flowers and stuff like that within Greek myth and so on, Roman myth. So let's see. Narcissus was a hunter. I'll just brought up Wikipedia quickly here. From Thespia and Boeotia, or alternatively Mimas, or modern-day Karaburun, Izmir, who was known for his beauty, which was noticed by all regardless of gender. According to the best-known version of the story by Ovid, which is a very late one, Narcissus rejected all advances, eventually falling in love with a reflection in a pool of water, tragically not realizing its similarity in transplant. In some versions, he beat his breast, purple in agony at being kept apart from this reflective love, and in his place sprouted a flower bearing his name. Origin of the term narcissism, of course, but there's an association with the nymph Echo. There we go. So Ovid's a Roman, writing around the turn of the century, I suppose. Turn of the millennium. Whoa, that's the wife sneezing. Gesundheit. Don't know if you heard that there. It's an interesting myth. What would that be? Ovid's Metamorphoses, would it? Probably. But yeah, reflection within Irish and Scottish mythology, Carlos, and I think even to a degree within some of the pools, particularly, can be an entrance to the underworld or this kind of thing, or often can be perilous, I think, if you know what I mean. God, I'm trying to think of a particular example. There's this, I don't know if you know the Waterhouse painting of Hylas and the nymphs. Hylas is the Argonaut who finds a bunch of nymphs, of course, live in a pool, and he come and love us, and he goes and he drowns. You know, Hylas is the reason that Heracles abandons the Argonauts and ceases to be one of them. because he's buddies with Hylas, and when Hylas doesn't return to the ship, nobody knows what's happened to him. Heracles stays behind to search for him, never finds him. That's the reason why Heracles leaves the Argonauts. Oh. But yeah, Carlos, it was yourself that was reading. You were telling me about. I bring this up on the screen, and I don't know if you saw the wee video that I did on All Watched Over by Machines of Love and Grace. Bear with me a wee second. There we go. But it was you. It was telling me about your. Oh, here I can't do that. Hang on, I nearly shut the whole page down. You that was telling me about your people, I believe, and I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. I think it was either the Yaqui or the Yakai, or Yaqui, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. But I was having a look on again, just what Wikipedia has, and I thought it was fascinating. But it was particularly to do with the cosmology and religion. I thought this is fascinating. The Yaqui conception of the world is considerably different from that of the European, Mexican, European American neighbors. For example, many UME believe that the universe is composed of overlapping yet distinct worlds or places called Aniam. 9 or more different Aniam are recognized. And it was this that I thought was fascinating. There's a flower world, an enchanted world, a dream world, a night world, a wilderness world, the corncob world, the mountain world, the world under the water, and the world from the sky up through the universe. But I'm sure you know all this. But it was the next bit, just reading from the Wikipedia thing, it was saying that each of these worlds has its own distinct qualities as well as forces. And you may relate deer dancing with 3 of them, since the deer emerges from Ania, an enchanted home, into the wilderness world Hoya Ania, and dances in the flower world Sia Ania, which can be accessed through the deer dance. I was reading away about that. I thought it was fascinating, and just in relation to what we were talking about. But whenever I did the little video for All Watched Over by Machines of Love and Grace, and the way it put all the deer into it, and it really made me think about that. So there you go. But thank you very much for introducing me to that. It's interesting. I hope I'm not butchering the pronunciations there, Carlos. Bam. Yes, Neither believes that photographs would steal their souls. It's interesting, isn't it? All sorts of beliefs in the world. Wouldn't it be nice to get around the whole planet and sit and have a bit of a chat with people who are really in touch with their culture and their that kind of thing, and just get them to tell their stories? I think those kind of things are fascinating. Where do we get? So yes, the worm in the room. She's naked, so off she pops and gets dressed, and basically that's about it. But just to keep pointing at this mirror, the reflections, and the only time we do, she looks in the mirror. I suppose that first time we get 1,000 reflections. She begins brushing her hair before a wall mirror. She felt sweaty, sad, a post-coitum kind of sadness that left her with a desire to bathe. To bathe once more and to sleep. That reminded me on what is it? I don't know. Does anybody know the quotation after coition or after coitus? Every animal is sad. It's post coitum omne animal triste. I've just written down here. It's wrongly attributed to Galen. It's Neo-Latin, and it's something similar to the petit mort. It's just that particular. She felt sweaty, sad, a post-coitum kind of sadness, and it, that's a thing I kind of read from a book of quotes years ago, and it just reminded me of it. So I went and dug it up and put it. So Ali says, "Why are you here?" Stilgar says, "My lord." Now, how would I do this? My lord. There was an odd inflection in his voice that brought Alia around to stare at him. Something about it that immediately she doesn't particularly like. Maybe because he doesn't answer the question. Paul says, and here we go again, something interesting. We're here at Irulan's suggestion. as strange as that may seem. Based on what we know, we've got a little bit of dramatic irony there, don't we? Based on the previous chapter. And here we go. She believes, and information in Still's possession appears to confirm it, that our enemies are about to make a major try for, and he's cut off, my lord! Stilgar's, his voice sharper. And we get Alia's point of view here. So they're about to make a major try for what? We don't know. We get cut off. Excuse me. And Stilgar's not going about business, really. Paul says, why? Oh, we're here about... No, he's cut off. And we're told from Alia's point of view, as her brother turned questioning, Alia continued to look at the old Fremen Naib. Something about him now made her intensely aware that he was one of the primitives. Stilgar believed in a supernatural world. Very near him, it spoke to him in a simple pagan tongue, dispelling all doubts. Excuse me. Now, I don't know what you think about this. Alia's attitude here. Oh, tell you what, I'll just read on a little bit. Stilgar believed in a supernatural world very near him. It spoke to him in a simple pagan tongue, dispelling all doubts. The natural universe in which he stood was 1, fierce, 2, unstoppable, 3, it lacked the common morality of the Imperium. And I've written down, I wonder what that is exactly. What is the common morality of the Imperium? And we would assume it would have to do with the rule of law, etc., etc. But and I suppose the Butlerian Jihad. But whenever we do talk about the Fremen, for example, killing is casual with them. They're not too bothered about it. They don't seem to suffer from guilt or anything like that. And so there's something, what's going on with Stilgar? But the description of him, he's old, by the way, we're being told here. He's an old Fremen Naib here. He's aged a bit. And you kind of wonder how that works with the Fremen and the fact that melange is, for want of a better word, an anti-agapic. It slows down the aging process. But she's intensely aware that he's one of the primitives. And this is a word I hate. It's often so misused. Primitive means first, pretty much. And so whenever we talk about cultures, etc., if we tend to use the word primitive as to mean not advanced, or backward, or atavistically retarded, or something like that. And it's seldom. It's one of those words that I think whenever we talk, it's one of those words that's seldom used in the correct fashion, if you see what I mean. He's primitive. That's not a very nice thing to think about him in that sense, because there is a bit of a taint to Alia's thinking here. And she's going to get a bit miffed with him, I think. And she is going to get miffed with him. The natural universe in which he stood was fierce, unstoppable, and lacked common morality of the Imperium. So he's just pushing on. Paul doesn't really get this here. Yes, still, do you want to tell her why we came? It's almost as if, do you want to do the talking? Why are you interrupting me? Carlos is saying, I'm not one to talk. I still avoid cracks in the sidewalk, laughing out loud. I have a couple, Carlos. They're maybe not superstitious, but they're more kind of habits, etc. But I used to kind of test superstitious things. I would walk under ladders. I would do that kind of thing. But I always rinse a glass of water out twice before filling it. Once, twice, and then the third. And it sounds quite weird, and especially when you think about water in light of this book. But I've been doing that since I was a little kid, and I don't know why. But we've all got little things, don't we? I suppose. But yeah, quirks and stuff. The other thing is you learn things when you're young. We were having a chat about oh goodness, even chatting about words within this, that I learned certain pronunciations, for example, before maybe I went and studied classical studies. then I learned other pronunciations. And after I finished years going on, I try to work at pronunciations because I don't speak really any languages at all. I'm a kind of wordsmith. I like words, and I speak a few languages, but not very well. But one of the things that I found interesting is trying how the one that I used to do when I was very young, was a Goethe, for example. I used to call him Guth. And nobody ever did correct me, if you see what I mean. It's one of those things. You learn bad habits. Sometimes you just habits are interesting things, aren't they? Some are good, some are bad. But you have to wonder why we do them sometimes. Here we go. Paul says, also, yes, Stell, do you want to tell her why we came? Stilgar, this isn't the time to talk of why we came. I mean, again, paradoxical. What's wrong, Still, says Paul. And Stilgar continued to stare at Alia. Sire, are you blind? No, you could actually kind of went almost with this conversation would have been more relevant when she was standing in front of them, sweaty and naked. And I think that statement, by the way, "Sire, are you blind?" is really important. There's a bit of foreshadowing there. And the question I've asked here is he? Is Paul blind to what's going on here? We're told that Paul turned back to his sister, a feeling of unease beginning to feel him. Of all the aides, only Stilgar dared speak to him in that tone, but even Stilgar measured the occasion by its need. That's an interesting thing, that only people would dare talk to him. He's the only person that would dare talk to him in that tone. So we can assume that Paul Atreides doesn't like being talked to in a harsh tone, and would probably have consequences for it. There is a thing about anger and violence around Paul, I think, but he's now the emperor of the known universe, isn't he? He'll demand respect. Stilgar can get away with it. Stilgar's Paul's friend, I think, and this is really, really important to this. I think is the friendship between Paul, Stilgar, and Alia throughout the books here. The thing that's from Stilgar's point of view is going to be tested, and I think it's from the Atreides, Paul and Alia. Whoa, what was that? From the Atreides point of view, Paul and Alia really need to keep Stilgar on side. They need him to understand, I think, that they're not gods, although for all intents and purposes they are pretending to be. So Paul turned back to his sister, a feeling of unease beginning to feel him. Of all his aides, only Stilgar dared speak to him in that tone, but even Stilgar measured the occasion by its needs. So it's not something he does very often, only when needed. This one must have a mate. There'll be trouble if she's not wed, and that soon. There we go. Alia whirled away, her face suddenly hot, and her thoughts here are, how did he touch me? She wondered. And this is an interesting thing here, I suppose. Bene Gesserit's self-control had been powerless to prevent her reaction. How had Stilgar done that? He hadn't the power of the voice, and we're told that she felt dismayed and angry. So we get a bit of, I suppose I made a wee note here. I've just put that Alia's mystique of womanhood is seen through the pragmatic yet superstitious, Stilgar. And that there's a level of condescension towards Stilgar here, I think, from Alia, but I think it comes out of anger. But something about him now made her intensely aware that he was one of the primitives. I think it's a pretty awful word to use to describe Stilgar. I think he's not primitive at all. In fact, Stilgar as a Fremen's quite forward thinking, I think. Otherwise he wouldn't have taken the Atreides in. And his ability to kind of understand that times change, things need to change. But he hadn't the power of how did he do this? How does he know that I need a mate, basically? How has he done this? And her anger and condescension come out here again. Listen to the great Stilgar, keeping her back to them, aware of a shrewish quality in her voice and unable to hide it. Advice to maidens from Stilgar, the Fremen. There's a few interesting things there. She calls herself a maiden. Stilgar the Fremen. Oh, I was going to write something down there that I hadn't, but let me see. Oh, yeah. In the previous chapter, let's have a look at the shrew. Irulan was described as being shrewish. I don't think shrews are gorgeous. Look at them. They're absolutely lovely. Small mole-like mammals. There we go. They're absolutely gorgeous. However, I'll just very quickly, if we can find it in... no. Yeah, there we go. If you look up shrew on Wikipedia, you'll see it's, if you go away from the animal, you'll see that there's an entry on Wikipedia about the shrew being a stock character. Described here as an unpleasant, ill-tempered woman characterized by scolding, nagging, and aggression. Is a comedic stock character in literature and folklore, both Western and Eastern. The theme is illustrated in Shakespeare's play, The Taming of the Shrew, obviously. We do have a number of Shakespearean aspects to the initial Dune trilogy. Let's see. Is there anything else here? In reference to actual women rather than stock character, the shrew is considered old-fashioned, and the synonym scold as a noun is archaic. She's a bit of a scold, a bit of a shrew. The term shrew is still used to describe the stock character in fiction and folk storytelling. None of these terms are usually applied to males in modern English. The stereotype or cliche is often common in early to mid-20th century films and retains some present-day currency, often shifted somewhat towards the virtues of the stock female character or the heroic virago. There we go. Folklorist Jan Harald Brunvan collected over 400 literary and oral versions of shrew stories in 30 cultural groups in Europe in the mid-20th century. So there you go. Another second female character within 2 chapters being described as a shrew. And Carlos was saying in relation to what we were chatting about, social imprinting. Yeah, it's all of these things that, when you grow up and you're told this, that, and the other. Oh, don't walk under a ladder, it's bad luck. All of this kind of stuff. A lot of it comes out of folklore. You call it social imprinting. It's the little stories that we tell our kids, fairy tales, all of this kind of stuff. What harm did a crack ever do anybody on a sidewalk? I suppose occasionally stumble on a wee bit or trip, but yeah, this is a good reason for avoiding them. I suppose there must be some kind of common sense to a lot of these things. We're going to see one sort of thing coming up quite soon. Goodness, when are we going to chat about the word shibboleth? I thought it was next page. There we go. We're not too far from it. So yeah, she's not happy, and she doesn't. The thing I think it's interesting about Paul and Alia here is that what they can see with their own eyes and what they can see with prescience. And I suppose the idea of relying on prescience too much, it's a bit like sitting in a house with no windows, watching the weather forecast and never sticking your head out the door just to see what the weather's like outside. So Stilgar's pragmatism here really is coming through. And I think the interesting thing is that we have a situation here that would be handled differently in a siege, and in the siege where there's virtually no privacy, if you see what I mean. We've got the kind of reversal of that here, where with Alia's in her own private chambers here, and in walk 2 burly men while she's naked, but not so much as a by your leave. In fact, one of them throws his knife right across the room. So Stilgar's response here is good, I think. As I love you both, I must speak. And we're told that there's a profound dignity in his tone. I did not become a chieftain amongst the Fremen by being blind to what moves men and women together. One needs no mysterious power for this. And yeah, there you go. Um, Paul, we're told, weighed Stilgar's meaning, reviewed what they had seen here, and on his own undeniable male reaction to his own sister. Yes, there'd been a ruttish air about Alia, something wildly wanton. What had made her enter the practice floor in the nude? Um, and risking her life in that foolhardy way, 11 lights in the fencing prisms. That brainless automaton loomed in his mind with all the aspects of an ancient horror creature. This got something to do with what you were saying, Carlos, about has this machine got no self-determination? This is a hangover from the Butlerian Jihad. This brainless automaton loomed in his mind with all the aspects of an ancient horror creature. Its possession was the shibboleth of his age, but it carried also the taint of old immorality. Once they'd been guided by an artificial intelligence, computer brains, the Butlerian Jihad had ended that, but it hadn't ended the aura of aristocratic vice which enclosed such things. Stilgar was right, of course. They must find a mate for Alia. That's almost a little sidestep there at the end. So let's have a wee look at this. What they're getting, I suppose, what we're told from Alia's point of view, obviously her thoughts are heavily on hate. She gets out of the bath to fight her sense of lethargy and to get rid of all of and to do some exercise. I suppose it's interesting that if you think about it, the idea of a gymnasium, for example. Let me bring this up on the screen. From our ancient Greek friends, let's go to the ancient Greek one. There we go. So the gymnasium in ancient Greek functioned as a training facility for competitors in public games, also a place for socializing, engaging in intellectual pursuits. The name comes from the ancient Greek term gymnos, meaning naked or nude. Only adult male citizens were allowed to use the gymnasium. There you go. So everybody, gymnasiums were ultimately places where you did your exercise. You ultimately did it in the buff. Shrews get a bad rap. They do indeed, says Carlos. I think there's some interesting shrewish characters that can be good fun. Angry woman. We've got one here. Well, I suppose the anger, but I think it's hard to tell. Is this really looking at a female from the man's point of view in this interesting world? Is their observation correct? Had there been a ruttish air? What I got from is that she's taking the piss out of them. She's self-conscious of her nudity, thought to cover herself, but found the idea amusing. She's having a giggle. What the eyes take a good look, boys. This kind of thing. It's deliberate and suggestive, but they have invaded her privacy. I thought a ruttish air about her, wildly wanton. What had made her enter the practice floor in the nude? Why not? I suppose is the thing I would ask. If it's your own private gym, risking her life in that foolhardy way, 11 lights and the fencing prisms. That's fair enough, I suppose. And we have this brainless automaton. All the aspects of an ancient horror creature. And I think that's the suggestion of all the aspects of an ancient machine from the Butlerian Jihad. Its possession was the shibboleth of its age. Now, this is where we're going to have a wee chat about this. It carried the taint of old immorality. And we go to the Butlerian Jihad here, and we're told that once machines like this have been guided by artificial intelligence, computer brains, the Butlerian Jihad had ended that, but it hadn't ended the aura of aristocratic vice which enclosed such things. What I get now, I don't think that this machine is one of those, but I don't think it's intelligent. But what I get from that, and we'll have a wee chat about this word shibboleth. I'm wondering if Chai is still there. She can maybe help me see if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But I think it's shibboleth, and it's the pronunciation of this word that's important for a reason. I'll just explain it. But what I think is the suggestion here is that machines like this, horror from an ancient time, if you like, but the aura of aristocratic vice, which includes such things, it sounds like, if you know what I mean, that the rich people want to own like endangered birds' eggs, or anything that's dangerous or strange or unusual, to the point where they might go to extremes to purchase things like that. Almost got the suggestion that from that certain machines like that might still be around, but its possession was the shibboleth. So let's chat about that. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and hope maybe we can be correct, I think the pronunciation of this word is shibboleth or shibboleth, like that, not shibboleth as it would be written in English. I'm just looking at the accent markers here on the word shibboleth. Again, now here's the interesting thing. So shibboleth is a Hebrew word meaning, as far as I know, the ear of corn, or that part of a plant that's edible, if you like. And it's a custom, principle, or belief distinguishing a particular class or group of people, especially a long-standing one regarded as outmoded or no longer important. So it's also a test of nationality or ethnicity. And I'll chat about that, how that works in this country in a minute, because we have something similar. So in the Bible, the Old Testament, Judges chapter 12, verse 6, here's the quotation. So they said, all right, say shibboleth. And if he said shibboleth, because he could not pronounce the word correctly, they seized him and killed him at the fords of the Jordan. 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. So an ancient battle, isn't it? And let me bring this up. I love words like this. Let me see now. You can help me. Term. Let me just say, Wikipedia's got something different than what I had. Shibboleth, containing grain, such as the ear of a stalk or wheat or rye, or less commonly, but arguably more appropriately, flood or torrent. Don't know that. I should write that down as well. Hang on. Also, flood or torrent. Groovy. I love learning words. Talking about teaching old dogs new tricks. I'm an old dog, and I'm doing lots of learning here. Let me just see if I can find the background for that. In the book of Judges, chapter 12, after the inhabitants of Gilead, under the command of Jephthah, inflicted a military defeat on the invading tribe of Ephraim. This is given a very wide date range of 1370 to 1070. The surviving Ephraimites tried to cross the river Jordan back into their home territory, but the Gileadites secured the river's ford to stop them. To identify and kill these Ephraimites, the Gileadites told each suspected survivor to say the word shibboleth. The Ephraimite dialect resulted in a pronunciation that to Gileadites sounded like Sibboleth. In Judges 12, 5-6 in the King James Bible, the anecdote appears thus, with the word already in its current English spelling. And I'll just read you this one again. And the Gileadites took the passages of Jordan before the Ephraimites, and it was so that then those Ephraimites which were escaped said, let me go over. That the men of Gilead said unto him, art thou an Ephraimite? And if he said, nay, then said they unto him, say now shibboleth. And he said Sibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passages of Jordan, and there fell that time at the Ephraimites 42,000. So it's a way of identifying someone who's not from your own culture, if you see what I mean. That if you had, it's there's Chaya kicking in there. Thank you, Chaya. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Shibboleth. Did I get it? Shibboleth. Hard T in Hebrew. Shibboleth. I kind of thought it was like a t, like that. Shibboleth. Like that, I hope. Shibboleth as a root means press down or sink, can be swirling, a path leading downward, a flowing garment, and ears of corn, depending on vowelization, etc. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Excellent. It's hard to get the grips with different languages sometimes, isn't it? But particularly we've got a word that has so much loaded into it. So simply put, this is a way of identifying that if you can't sit in the Bible story that we were talking about, that the Gileadites trying to identify you from it, simply they won't be able to pronounce this word correctly. And we'll get everyone to say this word, and anybody who mispronounces it. But in this sense, I suppose, but interesting that also flood, I suppose. And quite a lot there, actually. Press down, sink, swirling, a path leading downward. That's an interesting one as well. A flowing garment. That's a lot of uses for one word, isn't it? A flowing garment, down or sink, like a swirling path leading downward, on ears of corn. Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you so much, Chaya. I really appreciate that. And I've just written that. So in this case, it's an outmoded thing that distinguishes one class of people from another. And I've written here, note how Alia condescends to Stilgar the Fremen, if you see what I mean. But it's suggesting that this is something in the possession of the wealthy, perhaps. It's an interesting thing. China sounds similar to today, not to get political, don't worry about it, but Palestinians don't have a sound equivalent for the letter P. Interesting. I was going to say we have a thing in Northern Ireland which is very similar. So in Northern Ireland, depending on certain words, you will identify yourself as a Catholic or a Protestant. We call it the tell. And as you know, I love mucking around with it. I have so much fun with it. I've caused a fight in a pub over it, just to take the piss out of these people. So, for example, in Northern Ireland, our capital city is Belfast. Our second city, if you like, depending on what you say, will identify you as a Catholic or a Protestant. So it's one of those things. Have you been up to? And the interesting thing is on our news, and when the town is Derry or Londonderry, and if you call it Derry, you've identified yourself as a Catholic. There you go. If you say Londonderry, you've identified yourself as a Protestant. And we have a range of things like that. But we also, as you're saying, that the Palestinians don't have a sound equivalent for the letter P. We have a lot of Irish people, not in Northern Ireland, I would say, but in the Republic, have the letter H is a problem for them. A few jokes we could hear about the Irish people talking about the coronation of the new English king, and that he would be King Charles the Third, is how they would say it. In fact, the number 3 is a tricky one. I think sometimes if you in this country just ask someone to say the number 3, and you'll get a lot of Irish people will say it like tree, and again the H is dropped. But yeah, the tell is a thing, within this country it identifies you as what type of sectarian Christian are you, and it's a thing that people will engage you in conversation with. I personally call Derry. I would use Derry because I can't be arsed saying Londonderry. It's too long-winded. But I don't know if you know the song Danny Boy is known as the Londonderry air or the Derry air, as an air on that kind of air. So I call it Derry air, which is French for arse. But there you go. Isn't it great to be different? Let's just catch up. Carlos is saying, I wonder if the machines had individualism or a hive mind type of intelligence. I don't think we'll ever know, Carlos, to be honest with you. And Chai is saying, not for the word, but for the word's root. Conjugation, vowelization give broad options for usage. And Eva says it's called code switching. Oh, someone's given it a term. Yeah, the tell is, as I said, I've had fun. I started an all right kind of ruckus. Once upon a time, I used to live in a place called Roden Street, and I just rented a house there. Roden Street in Belfast. I think Alex Higgins, the world champion snooker player from there, is not well. It's just off a place called off Shaftesbury Square, and a loyalist area known as Sandy Row, and it has part of the Peace Wall, if you like. And I was doing a gig as part of Happy Shrapnel out at a caravan park up in North Antrim. And somebody said, "Oh, you lived in Belfast?" I said, "I lived in Roden Street, And the guy decided that he could bet me that he knew what religion I was because I lived there. And I took his bet. I went, go ahead. And he says, you're a Protestant. I went, no, give me my money. And then somebody else jumped in and went, he's obviously a Catholic. I went, no, that's... And I just set them on each other. It was quite fun. You know, interesting that they'd all come down from Belfast just to, you know, or come up, as I would say, actually. I always think of people coming down from Belfast, but where I live, they come up. You know, but it is there, and there's a number of things within that, and I think, you know, there's plenty of examples of that kind of thing. I didn't know it had a name, code switching, but I thought the word shibboleth, I thought that was fascinating. Excuse me. Linguistic code of language, dialect, and other depending on social context or conservational setting. Go to Wikipedia very quickly. So much to do with language in the world, isn't there? 51, California. Pardon me. Yeah, types. That's very interesting. I'll have to have a wee look at that. 1, 2 sentences. And I tend to be a bit wordy over here, you see, so I tend to, I don't know, but within my country, it is very much a dangerous thing. If someone's asking you, have you been, you know, what do you call it? They might be overt about it and just go, what do you call that city? It's the, you know, my son actually got accosted recently in a pub. And it was demanded of him, first of all, someone just walked up to him and wanted to know if he was a Catholic. My son wouldn't really know, to be honest. He's not really anything. And then after that, they wanted to know if he was in the UVF, lovely little place in Ballymoney. And was kind of suggesting to him that he doesn't go back to that pub. You know, but the troubles certainly haven't disappeared here. But it is one of those things, and there are lots of little subtle things. Some are quite obvious. You know, there's the Celtic Rangers kind of football tops, etc. Not really a linguistic thing, but particularly the tell is our version of it here. You know, but just thank you very much, Chai. I appreciate that. That's interesting. I've been thinking about trying to maybe find time to learn some languages. Languages were the thing that suffered because my education. I'm always moving schools and stuff. Languages were the thing that got hit the worst. For me, I tended to go to one school that did one language, went to a different school that did a different one. And each time I moved schools, I would start the last time I moved schools, I started 2-3 years behind everybody else in French because I hadn't done it at my previous school. So I kind of started German in one school, left that school, and then went to another school where they didn't do that and I had to do French. And I think I came, I did all right, I suppose, but I think my French and German are appalling, you know. I speak a little bit. It's why I tend to focus on words if I travel. You know, a single word can convey a lot of meaning. You know, please, thank you, help, these kind of things. Was the one thing I always loved when I was a kid. I don't know which cartoon it is in, but I always loved Scooby Doo. Scooby and Scrappy Doo. There's our big Holly sitting down there. Hello. And I always liked the fact that Scooby and Scrappy Doo Scooby-Doo and Shaggy, could say one word in every language in the world, and it was help. Help, Scoob. You know, and I just thought that's a useful thing to know. You know, help and pardon me are very useful things in any language. But I was thinking about attempting to pick up. I've been looking online at some really good. There's some great stuff on YouTube, but some really good stuff on Homeric Greek, which I never got an opportunity to learn. And my understanding is, apart from the alphabet, which I can kind of read it a bit, it's not that difficult. Hopefully within a mind of making a lifelong dream of getting to Greece one day. I'd be happy as a pig rooting in its own shit if I could get myself to Greece. Yeah. But yeah, languages. I wish I had the opportunity to study languages more, or just to study them. Any one really would have done properly. But I'm thinking about if I can find the time, it would be a useful thing to do. So thank you very much. That's another fascinating word. The other thing I was just thinking about that when I was looking at that today and the other day, it was just in terms of anybody who was wanting to do work on Dune from an academic point of view. We've talked about the topics that have been covered. I must tell you, Cara Kennedy's. I'll write that down actually, so I don't forget. But Cara Kennedy's got another book out, and I'll tell you about it in a wee second. But what I simply thought was just in terms of how this channel works and the number of different language speakers that we have that pop in and help out. What a fantastic resource that is. And I was just thinking, if you're wanting to approach do a PhD on the Dune series, if you're a polyglot, this would be a dream. That and I know that's been looked at as a polyphonic novel, but not by someone who's a polyglot. And it would be. I know we have people who look at it from, different linguistic aspects. But wouldn't it be great if you had one really good linguist who could work at this? Who had a real interest in science fiction. What they would bring to the party would be great, I think. But and another really interesting story from the Old Testament there. So, okay, back to the Stilgar was right. Of course, they must find a mate for Alia. They've made it, and Paul says, "I will see to it. Alia and I will discuss it later, privately." So we're told that Alia turned around, removing her angry stare on Stilgar, and focused on Paul. Knowing how his mind worked, she realized she'd been the subject of a mentat decision, uncounted bits falling together in that human-computer analysis. There was an inexorable quality to this realization, a movement like the movement of planets. It carried something of the order of the universe in it, inevitable and terrifying. She'd been the subject of a mentat decision, and the way it's described, uncounted bits falling together in that human-computer analysis, something of the order of the universe in it, order, I think, inevitable and terrifying. Inevitable, terrifying to Alia. And again, just makes us think of her being the anti-mentat. And in as much as that they are a Janus aspect, she is very much, and certainly the way that Herbert's laying the language here for Alia, he's presenting her as the same but opposite, if you see what I mean. And is it that mentat decision? If she's the ultimate anti-mentat, she doesn't like is it the order of the it carried something of the order of the universe in it, inevitable and terrifying. And I think that this what we're seeing in Alia is a chaotic character, in that the good old fashioned sense of the word chaos. She has, she feeds on the strong human desire for the mysterious. So what does the analytical do? Living proof that the analytic has limits. She represents ultimate tension. She's a virgin heart. She's witty. She's vulgar. She's cruel and destructive in her whims. It's like, goodness, that's can you almost imagine that as an advert for a dating agency? Alia needs a partner, and here's a description. Here's the earth figure, a demi-goddess. Not quite a goddess, but close enough. So they're going to see to it later privately, but this bothers her. Stilgar says, "Sire, perhaps we," and again he's cut off. "Not now. We've other problems at the moment." And Alia, we're told, is aware that she dared not try to match logic with her brother. Sorry, I'll read that again. Aware that she dared not try to match logic with her brother, Alia put the past few moments aside, Bene Gesserit fashion, said, "Irulan sent you." And she found herself experiencing menace in that thought. And again, that's Paul's next response here is indirectly, but we jump back a wee bit to where they first turn up. Let's just get there. Sorry. We're here at Irulan's suggestion, as strange as that may seem. That was a few pages ago. That's kicked in. Irulan sent you. She found herself experiencing menace in that thought. And again, what's Irulan up to? But Paul says indirectly. The information she gives us confirms our suspicion that the guild is about to try for a sandworm. And so when he was cut off earlier, giving us a little, I wonder what he was talking about. Again, just a couple of pages ago, there's the gap, the word that was cut off. They're going to try and get a sandworm. And this is the guild in particular. As much as we know there's a conspiracy at work, different aspects of that conspiracy seem to be doing individual things, possibly part of as a collective whole. Stilgar says they'll try to capture a small one and attempt to start the spice cycle in some other world. Pardon me. It means that they've found a world they consider suitable. And I've written a couple of little questions here. In fact, a whole bunch of them here. It means, Alia says, it means that they have Fremen accomplices. No off-worlder could capture a worm. Excuse me. Now, before we get back into that, I just thought a couple of interesting things. The spice cycle is referred to. Within this is something a bit like the water cycle, if you like. And I think it's also called the melange cycle. Later on. That's one thing. It seems they've found a world they consider suitable. Well, where would that be? Is the question I've asked. And the one that I've written down to, Tupile or Tupili, however we're going to pronounce that, could be one, because it's beyond their prescient sight. The other one I thought possible was Solus Secundus. But I was just wondering about that, and I don't really think so. So we're told it means that they have Fremen accomplices. No off-worlder could capture a worm. Of course, there are no Fremen present at the meeting of the conspiracy. So as much as we knew various groups were involved in it, the Fremen are involved in it too. No off-worlder could capture a worm. That's an absolute, as Frank likes to point out, and absolutes tend to go not quite the way we think. Stilgar says, that goes without saying, and he's backing her here. And she turns on him here a bit. No, it doesn't. She was outraged by such obtuseness. Paul, certainly you. Outraged. She's not happy with Stilgar's, well, what she considers his stupidity here. And again, not, it's made her angry. So what she's saying is it means they have Fremen accomplices. No off-worlder could capture a worm. That goes without saying. No, it doesn't. And what does she mean by that? Does it need to be said, or I'm presenting you with an absolute that you think is that goes without saying? I'm telling you it's not true. It's again this contradiction within Alia. Paul tells us that the rot is setting in. He interrupts her here. The rot is setting in. We've known that for quite some time. I've never seen this other world though, and that bothers me. She cuts him off. That bothers you? She demanded. It means only that they've clouded its location with steersmen, the way they hide their sanctuaries. So the question I've written here is this word on one of the guild sanctuaries? If you see what I mean. We learn later about, I suppose, homeworlds, and the Bene Gesserit have a sanctuary, don't they? This kind of hidden places to keep safe. I like this little bit that just follows here. The Stilgar, it's a nice little bit of writing, sort of characterization, I think. And just with the way Stilgar has been behaving, he opened his mouth, we're told, closed it without speaking. He had the overwhelming sensation that his idols had admitted blasphemous weakness. And this is this kind of man who would be God kind of thing. Stilgar observing these two, as much as he accepts them, and as a certain way, he's seeing weaknesses in them, blasphemous weaknesses. Paul, sensing Stilgar's disquiet, said, "We've an immediate problem. I want your opinion, Alia. Stilgar suggests we expand our patrols in the open blade and reinforce the siege. It's just possible we can spot a landing party and prevent the..." And again, interrupted by Alia, "with a steersman guiding them." Paul says, "Well, they are desperate, aren't they? That is why I'm here." Alia says, "Well, what have they seen that we haven't?" "Precisely." And Alia nodded, remembering her thoughts about the new Dune tarot. Quickly, she recounted her fears. Paul says, "throwing a blanket over us." And Stilgar ventured, with adequate patrols, we might prevent that." And he's cut off again by Alia. "We prevent nothing forever." She didn't like the feel of the way Stilgar's mind was working now. He had now, she remembered. And I've made a wee note here about how has Stilgar changed. I got a wee point here. If anybody's got a copy of the book here, just "we prevent nothing forever." Let me just see. I think I have a wee misprint here. It might just be a punctuation misprint. "We prevent nothing forever," Alia said. Something like the feel of Stilgar's mind was working now, and then I've got a comma, and then it's followed by he with a capital letter. So it must be just a wee. I'll just put there comma misprint. So she doesn't like the way Stilgar's thinking. This was not the Stilgar she remembered. And so as we go through this, I suppose we're not going to get too much on it here, but we have to consider how we're going to see how some of the Fremen have changed with the realization of their dream, if you like, with the realization of power. And Stilgar is one in particular that we can pay real attention to. What's different about him? We must count, as Paul said, we must count on their getting a worm. Whether they can start the melange cycle on another planet is a different question. They'll need more than a worm. And I've written down, has he foreseen this? Stilgar, here we go. Stilgar looked from brother to sister. Out of ecological thinking that had been ground into him by siege life, he grasped their meaning. So it's not just a worm. You need more. A captive worm couldn't live except within a bit of Arrakis. Sand plankton, little makers and all. The guild's problem was large, but not impossible. His own growing uncertainty lay in a different area. Stilgar says, "Then your visions do not detect the guild at its work?" And I think this is a point where Paul's explodes here with the word damnation. And I think this is Paul's annoyance at how, I suppose, Stilgar's thinking here as well. But there's a strong desire to keep Stilgar on side here. I think that he should understand. I think the thing as we go forward with the book is that they really do try to demonstrate that they have limitations, that they're not gods to Stilgar, that they want him to understand them as being human to a degree, just a bit different, if you like. Alia studied Stilgar, sensing the savage slight. Oh, sorry, this is very similar. Let's have a go at this again. Alia studied Stilgar, sensing the savage sideshow of ideas taking place in his mind. I did okay. He was hung on a rack of enchantment. Magic. To glimpse the future was to steal terrifying fire from a sacred flame. It held the attraction of ultimate peril, souls ventured and lost. One brought back from the formless, dangerous distances something with form and power. But Stilgar was beginning to sense other forces, perhaps greater powers beyond that unknown horizon. His queen witch and sorcerer friend betrayed dangerous weaknesses. Carl said hated Scooby-Doo. The villain was always some old guy in a mask. I don't like the new Scooby-Doo at all. But the old Scooby-Doo, Carlos, it was a combination of certain things, but I love the music in it, and yeah, that was good fun when I was young. But it was something, and when we talk about little talking about social imprinting and little things that you pick up when you're a child or something like that, that you note and you think, well, that's interesting, or I think bring that onto my character. I make it a part of yourself. But the one thing I always thought was that they knew how to. I thought was great was that they knew how to ask for help. And that they always had time for a good sandwich. Scooby Doo. Yeah. Alias is Stilgar, and we're told here that she's fighting to hold him, to keep him on side. I think. You stand, and again, this is an explanation for Stilgar. You stand in a valley between dunes, and I stand on the crest. I see where you do not see, and among other things, I see mountains which conceal the distances. And Stilgar says, there are things hidden from you. This you've always said. Alia replies, all power is limited, and danger may come from behind the mountains. Alia says, something on that order. And Stilgar nodded, his gaze fastened on Paul's face, but whatever comes from behind the mountains must come across the dunes. And that's the end of that chapter. Before we just finish up, what we get a bit of a sense of here is almost a bit of an idea of Alfred Korzybski's general semantic, the idea that the map is not the territory. This little description of, I can stand in the valley, or you stand in the valley, but I stand on the crest. But the other thing is just what this chapter ends with, as much as it's kind of a wandering, it's taken us around a few different places, hasn't it? It's this kind of sexual awakening, if you like, for want of a better term, of Alia. The two men intruding on her, the discussion of the plot, Irulan's involvement here, and Stilgar's, almost acting like a leader of the Siege, I suppose, in that sense. But the men making decisions for Alia. But within the superstition, if you like, the ecological way of life that the Fremen would have, we get Stilgar's the mysticism that we're told that they're fae, which is a great word. I've never didn't discuss that word earlier, but fae is kind of like witch-like or fairy, isn't it? Hang on a second. Giving an impression of vague unworldliness or mystery, or rather fae, having supernatural powers of clairvoyance. There you go. When I used to live up in Larne all the time, I used to drive up to outside of Larne in Northern Ireland, up in the mountain, is a place called Faestown. And there's no town there at all. It's a car park basically up a mountain. I used to go up there and chill out all the time, look down at the harbour. I used to head up there sometimes for New Year's to listen to all the boats sound their horns in the harbour at midnight, But just to say that, before I lose my track of thought, Stilgar's little statement of there about whatever comes from behind the mountains that I can't see, it has to come across the dunes. That's that last little bit of pragmatism there. And we end that chapter on, as much as Ali is trying to explain the limitations of their vision, Stilgar's trying to point out that we can send out real patrols, etc., etc. But again, Alia says that it might not be able to see. If a steersman is guiding them, he'll be able to know who's there and who's not. If you see what I mean, safe places to go. And I also got the sense that they want the worm. That there's things in motion here, and even when Paul's talking, we need to not now. And the way he's directing the conversation at certain times. But they both seem to be quite upset about what's going on, but their prescient vision is being kind of nullified in a way. And I suppose that we talk about the mysticism, the superstition of the Fremen, etc. But there's also that pragmatic aspect to it. We'll see how that works with the other Fremen later, I suppose. And I suppose we've seen a little bit of it with the the conspiracy whenever Skytail turns up at the the Fremen house. But so we get little bits about Alia and her relationship with the Fremen, and we get to see a little bit of Alia and Paul here. And really, the language and the key terms within this chapter are really setting them up as almost one and the same but opposite. Mentat, anti-mentat, analytical, loves the mysterious, this kind of thing. We get to see a little bit of Irulan's hand in this, whether it's but what's she up to at this point is not certain. The question here is she actively sort of arranging this meeting with Paul and Alia to kind of push this kind of level of intimacy with the two to try and get them to become intimate. It seems unlikely in this, or has she decided to sort of save her own skin and betray the conspiracy? And also, it's interesting that both women, previous chapter, Mohiam described Irulan as being a shrew, and we've got the same term used again for Alia. Oh, there we go. But that's the end of that chapter, folks. Location of the planet for the worms. Where is that? Could be Tupai. And the other sort of really thing is just superstition tempered by the pragmatism of Stilgar. Did Irulan act out her orders, or was she compelled to do so? Or has she betrayed the conspiracy? That's kind of what I've got from this chapter. But it's been a good one, I think. A little bit tricky to handle in terms of how the men view Alia and how we get Alia's thoughts don't seem to line up, I think. But there's other things within this as well, I suppose. But the bath in particular. And the use of the target, the fighting machine, if you like. And I especially enjoyed that sort of description of its possession was the shibboleth of this age, but it carried the taint of old immorality. Oh yeah, sorry. Just we were just saying there. I must remind you. I scribbled it down there. Cara Kennedy's got another book out on Dune. Bear with me a wee second. We'll look it up. She's over at Dune Scholar. I haven't spoken to her about that. Let's see. I don't do Twitter or anything like that anymore, but let's just have a wee look at her website. Cara offers a Dune 101 course on there. Let me see. New book out soon. There we go. Adaptations of Dune, Frank Herbert's story on the screen. Let's see, that's posted on January the 6th, 2024, just a month to go. Pre-ordered. Oh, there we go. Pre-order the Kindle ebook version on Amazon now, or wait until the paperback release on February the 5th. An audiobook version will hopefully follow soon after. I'll get you the link. There you go. If anybody's interested. There we go. There we are. So I think that's our third book on Dune now. Etc. Purely Kindle ebook version. Yeah, there you go. February the 5th. Sorry, it says pre-order the Kindle ebook version on Amazon now, or wait until the paperback release on February 5th, and it says an audiobook version will hopefully follow soon after. It says while the world has awaited the Dune Part 2 film now scheduled for a March release, I'm seeing February on some things. I decided to study the 3 existing adaptations and how faithful they are to Frank Herbert's book. All of the directors said publicly they wanted to stay faithful to the source material, so I took a closer look at the evidence in the story, script, settings, characters, and more. I discovered a lot of intriguing material along the way, and I hope you find what I've put together interesting too. There you go. Let me see. Publications, just for quickly check. Annotations. Yeah, and Cara's brought out Frank Herbert's Dune, A Critical Companion as well, published by Palgrave Macmillan. And of course, Women's Agency in the Dune Universe. That's 3 books on Dune now, which we had the honour of kind of launching here, doing a wee book launch for it. That was just quite nice. Yeah, I'll have to have a look at more things like that. So there we go, folks. Sorry, but hang on, my page is going to watch this dodgy mouse. So there we are. If anybody's got any wee questions or comments about this chapter, I'm kind of curious to know what you think about Alia here. One of my favourite characters by far, and within the Dune trilogy, and really just because of the nature of Alia's tragedy, I think, is what makes her interesting to me. But I always find her fascinating in Dune, actually, as the little baby. We talk about these babies within science fiction and fantasy literature, which are a bit much. She would be one of them. That would be an interesting one. You know the way these some authors put together fictional characters. Like the League of Alan Moore's The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, for example. Wouldn't it be? I was just thinking, wouldn't it be very interesting to put together all the really dangerous babies and make some kind of comic book or animation thing out of that? That would be fun. You can have Alia with is it Joe Kidd from from Sam Slade's Robo Hunter, for example. He's one of my favorite dangerous babies. You gotta love Sam Slade, Robo Hunter. He's on Wikipedia. There you go. It is Joe Kidd, isn't it? Let me just see if I can remember his name. Yeah, it's Kidd. Smoking Joe, is it? It's from the very first story. I'll just read this here. The first storyline, Verdus, also known as the Robot Planet. This is Sam Slade, Robo Hunter from 2008. Slade is dispatched to a distant colony planet to solve the mystery of its vanished colonists. An act of sabotage on his spacecraft causes time dilation during the trip, meaning that Slade arrives at the planet restored to his early 20s, while the ship's pilot, Kidd, is now a cynical talking baby. The colony world is populated entirely by robots. Robots charged with terraforming the planet and preparing for colonization have been programmed by their initial creator, a wood-burning droid called Smoking Joe. There you go. Joe Kidd is that's just his genesis, how he came about. If you haven't seen a picture of him, have a wee look, see if you can get some Robo Hunter covers. Robo Hunter has he's got a robot cigar called Stogie. He has a little kind of robot robometer kind of thing called QT, and then there's this little kid wearing a nappy, and usually smoking a big fat cigar, and being quite rude to the ladies and carrying a large gun. But sorry, that's just my whimsy kicking in there, folks. Like Carlos said, in Scooby-Doo, the villain was always the same old guy in a mask. Yeah, and he would have gotten away for it if it hadn't been for those damn kids. Well, the one thing I do love about the old Scooby-Doo, Carlos, is the music in it, the whole. And it's not that I learned how to play Scooby-Doo years ago, but it's quite a simple wee song. But it's the kind of the incidental music that's in it. The down. That kind of stuff I used to love. I don't know, I never liked Scrappy-Doo. There you go. Well, folks, there we go. We have another chapter done. And as apologies for the last week, we're just, I don't know, all sorts of things, but we just went for the Friday there. But our main goal is generally to go at Thursdays here at 9 o'clock GMT. And so I've already started the notes on the next chapter because it's a bit of a larger one. Providing the roof doesn't fall in, hopefully we'll be on time at Thursday at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock again next week. So I'll just get ready to head off. But if anybody's got any questions or comments or just random chat, work away. And then I'll say good night. Oh, I was going to say, Chaya, send us a wee email if you don't mind. Just let us know how you're doing. I know you don't want to talk about certain things on here, but I hope you're keeping well. And if you don't mind, just let us know if everything's okay and tickety about. But I hope your rib is healing. And the whole world's going to hell in a basket at the minute, isn't it? Oh dear. Saying that, I think things have been quite bad here for a while, but we've had no government, which has been great, to be honest with you. If we could just get rid of them completely. People of Northern Ireland have been running the country pretty much, and they haven't done a bad job. When our government has ran and hid since COVID, and let people like Boris Johnson stick a new border down the sea, as if putting one border in Northern Ireland wasn't a problem in the first place. But we've all sorts of stuff going on here. So apparently our government completely betrayed everybody in this country. If you look it up online, it'll say, "Well, we haven't had government for 2 years." That was to the last election. They did it prior to that as well. But Travis saying thanks and just got here, but always happy to listen. No worries, Travis. And China saying Alia's still young. She's so much in other memories she misses the normal feelings and emotions of puberty. Yeah, it's this kind of thing that's really, she's physically young, isn't she? But mentally she's so old, really. And she's so much in the other memory. I think that's the problem with both Paul and Alia in this. I suppose the fact that they're using their oracular vision, if you want, other memory as well, so much. As I said, it's a bit like they don't look out the window, but maybe having, I don't know, I kind of got Stilgar's and Paul's response. Stilgar's response I thought was maybe a bit over the top. But as you say, the normal feelings and emotions of puberty. She's got like all these memories of other people's, if you like. And I don't know. It's a funny thing. It's a bit like me reading words, isn't it, and not necessarily knowing if I'm pronouncing them right. That kind of thing. Just for a very loose analogy, but she's such a tricky character to get a hold on, isn't she? I don't find her difficult, but it's tricky to understand her, I think. And the mysteries, and of course, I suppose the next epigraph, just before we get to it, the most dangerous game in the universe is to govern from an oracular base, which is what they do, and it's one of those things as well where I suppose you think about prescience being a very, very special ability in Dune, and there are people. It seems that there could be an awful lot of people with limited prescience, to be honest with you. Yeah, but she's. The last Friday's chapter. Hope to finish it soon. I had actually piled on with this. Because I was enjoying it so much, and it's something I try not to do with these books as I go at them. I like to do each chapter as it comes fresh, and then go on to the next chapter. I'm not trying to look too far ahead because my memory's not that good in terms of when the last time I read these books. But I'm trying to work out. I think it's fun to work out what Frank's trying to do as he goes along to see how the pieces work. So I kind of give myself a bit of prescience and jumped ahead, but it wasn't really in relation to do with the work. In all honesty, I was enjoying the book so much. And how I'm working at this book and how I'm working at Dune, or how I worked at Dune for the other book club are quite different in a way. And I suppose the only other thing is that as we proceed through the book and we hit words and language and we go and investigate, and then the way Frank drops a word, he'll use it once, give you a bit, and then bring it into the next chapter, or particularly within Dune, he'll use the terminology of the Imperium, which is, I often find when you look up one word in the terminology of the Imperium, it tends to bounce you to another term. It's just moving forward with the book. I'm really enjoying it, and I don't know. There's less. The problem is that have we covered something before? I think is the problem that I'm starting to encounter. just in terms of have we, I don't like leaving out words if it's an unusual word. Have we had a wee look at it before? Within Dune, we've dumped words left, right, and centre, and we get quite a few of them being reused within here. So it's particularly whenever the new stuff comes up that I like that. And again, I think it's an awful shame that there's not a terminology of the Imperium or one that's continually expanded throughout the books that adds to the language of Dune. Yeah, but it's certainly an interesting chapter, and it's there's things being set up here. We've got a bit of foreshadowing, I suppose, which is interesting within a story that has actual prescience, but just that little things. I even wrote at the point where Paul looking at his undeniable male reaction to his sister. I wrote next to it just for a giggle, so I didn't read that out loud. It was just call the therapist. So we've got lots of elements of the plot starting to come together, if you like, the conspiracy. And how would I put it? Let me see. We're getting that development of Alia's character, who is mysterious to us. And so we've seen her a couple of times within chapters that she pops in, makes a few comments, disappears. This is the first time we're really getting a bit of insight into her character and what she thinks of those around her. We get a strong sense of empathy with Paul. There seems to be a real bit of and I think it's just anger, sort of almost anger at, I suppose, Stilgar's perception here, really. You can all say things in anger, this kind of thing. And I suppose the question of how is this plot, going forward. I was listening to a few things about Frank and looking at some quotes, just about how he doesn't like to answer things for you and how he likes to leave things hanging. And I actually thought almost a lot of the things that he doesn't answer, that they've opened up all sorts of that's pretty much a career path for Brian Herbert, isn't it? It's anything that's not talked about or done really we can follow on with. We can insert a story. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting chapter. I thought there's some very good writing in it. And I thought it really did make me think quite hard about Alia's character. And I suppose, again, the nature of prescience, the balancing act that they have to use, and the dislike of the use of religion as a tool of statecraft, I think, is there in both the Atreides, but they still do it, don't they? Everything that they don't like, they tend to do. Yeah, tension. A lot of tension, I think, in this chapter, but it's kind of I don't know. You get just at the end of her workout and these two that she just wants to go to sleep. I think there's something of a bit of a contradiction in how the men in the chapter look at her and how she looks at them, I suppose. Yeah, and lots of little things, and we get a good few drops of the that flesh things out. A few mentions of the Butlerian jihad in here. All useful for building up. It all weaves together. That's the thing with Frank. Once you get to the end of this book, it will have weaved. All of this will have weaved together really nicely. It'll. I'm getting barked at here. Someone's growling at me. And it is interesting, I suppose, knowing that Frank likes to weave all of these things together in very intricate detail to make it difficult, as he would say, to tease apart any of them. That's the thing as we follow these threads through the book. It'll be whenever we get to the end, and I know a lot of us know the end of the story, that a lot of it fits in and makes sense. And it's quite a tricky thing that he does, I think, particularly moving back and forward time in the chapters. But I thought it was a kind of straightforward chapter, but it's absolutely complicated, and not for on the reader. reader. I think it's taken a bit of work here, and there are little sections of language that the little triplets within this chapter: fierce, dangerous, immoral. There's a bunch. Where are we? The attack, parry, counter, I suppose. But where's the other one? Oh, let me see if I can find it. A bit further back. One was about Paul, wasn't it? And one was about hate. Anger, awareness, ability. That was what she noted with Paul. And when thinking about hate, it was fierce, dangerous, and immoral. Well, there we go. Yes, indeed. It's an interesting little chapter, folks. Well, listen, once again, I'm off to the dentist tomorrow. Hopefully I'll come back with all my teeth, but it might not be the case. So I'm going to get ready to hit the hay, folks. But once again, I will say thank you so much for joining me. And thank you, everybody, for your input. I've learned things today. We've learned a little bit about shibboleth and code switching, which I didn't know was a term. Shibboleth. That's a hard T. I thought, yeah, lots of little things here to consider, and as we see as things go forward, I suppose more oddly enough, I suppose just in terms of looking at Irulan and Alia in 2 chapters back to back here. The other thing I would consider is about how their roles are inverted within Dune itself, or within Dune Messiah. Irulan comes into the beginning of this book very much almost as a slightly sympathetic villain, but she is a villain. Alia would be part of our heroic, or part of our catastrophic hero. She is as much a hero to the Fremen as Paul is, and she's, I suppose that they both together make that Janus aspect, But it's interesting how Irulan's character changes, and again, she's been our main chronicler up until the end of Dune, and we'll also see Alia change as well, and their roles will invert into Children of Dune, I'm pretty sure. So there's a male kind of thing within the 3 books, if you like, but this definitely is the one I think where the female characters really come to the fore, and it makes me wonder sometimes about the things that, for example, Denis Villeneuve's doing with the characters of Chani, etc., in this film, because I think it's as much as you note one thing about the female characters in Dune, when we get to Dune Messiah, things are very different, aren't they? Well, there's Chaya saying, good night, Doc. Thanks. No worries, Chaya. Thank you. Much appreciated for your help with that word tonight. And I said, I hope you're keeping well. And I will say good night, folks, because I'll just ramble at this point and just keep gabbing. But I'll have to get up early. So there we go. So listen, once again, I'll say thank you very much for joining me, and thank you all for your help. It's always much appreciated. We're a best kept secret on YouTube, as I like to say. But couldn't do this without you folks, so it's always appreciated. And I'll just say, wherever you are, look after yourselves, take care, be safe, and yeah, good night and all the very best to you. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.